Welcome to my channel. In my channel, you can watch various type of fiction and fantasy audiobook. If you want more video like this, please subscribe my channel.
I am Homelander, Marvel Superstar. Part 1. Downtown Los Angeles. The Mark III crashed heavily through a building, alarms screaming inside the armor as Tony stared at the flashing red warning box inside his visor. Right thruster energy output at 0. Backup power system unresponsive. Obadiah controlled the massive ironmonger, approaching and laughing wildly. Tony, your genius brain can't save you. Obadiah raised the Gatling gun on his right arm, the barrels beginning to spin as they warmed up. 300 meters away, on the roof of an office building. The night wind blew past. Lee Zuguo took a bite of the hot dog in his hand, looking down at the street below. It had been a while since he had transmigrated and become Homelander. Originally, he thought he had transmigrated into the boys, until one day he saw on the news that Tony Stark had been kidnapped, and realized that this was actually Marvel. Lee Zuguo's dreams were instantly shattered, and his inflated ego calmed down. In this Marvel world, which has gods, dimensional demons, the Purple Titan, and all kinds of aliens, a weakened Superman who can be killed is not enough. Originally, Lee Zuguo wanted to lie low, but a system called the Multiverse Popularity Superstars system bound itself to him. As the name implies, fans and popularity are his strength. The more fanatical the fans, the more popularity points are produced. The more fans and the higher the popularity, the greater his abilities. Thus, Lee Zuguo started his own personal show, but he gradually discovered that just saving people to gain fans and popularity points was not enough. He was even maliciously attacked by people, and some even called him a mutant freak. So he had a new plan. That was to increase the intensity for Tony, slightly adding some stolen new materials to Obadiah's mecha. If he had just rushed down to help Tony dismantle the ironmonger, he would at most be considered a helpful citizen doing a good deed. The news headlines would still be occupied by the infighting at Stark Industries. Only by letting this arrogant genius billionaire fall into a desperate situation, on the verge of death, and then descending with an unstoppable posture, would the shocking effect be multiplied. The savior script, now is the perfect time to cut in. Hey big guy, I think your playtime is over. The voice came from above, attracting everyone's attention. A figure slowly descended from the sky. He wore a deep blue tight-fitting suit covered with star-spangled patterns, with golden shoulder pads and a belt adding a sense of solemnity. A star-spangled cape fluttered in the night wind. The searchlight beam from a helicopter hit the golden eagle emblem on his chest. Someone screamed. It's Homelander. He's here. The citizens who were originally fleeing in all directions slowly stopped. After all, watching the excitement is human nature. Keeping what they thought was a safe distance, the enthusiastic crowd took out their mobile phones and pointed their cameras at the back figure in the middle of the road. Oh my god, it really is him. He came to save this Iron Man. Tony lay at the bottom of the pit, looking at the figure wearing the flag-colored cape through his visor. How does this fool always manage to steal the spotlight at the perfect moment? Obadiah was stunned for half a second, staring through the monitor at the man in front of him who wasn't wearing any mecha. Get lost. This is a private matter for the Stark family. The Gatling gun barrels aimed at Lee Zuguo's chest. Bullets poured out. Dense armor-piercing rounds hit Lee Zuguo, making a crisp metallic clanging sound. The warheads deformed instantly and fell to the ground, not even tearing a single fiber of his uniform, as expected of a system-produced item. Lee Zuguo raised his leg without any wind-up and kicked the side of the ironmonger's chest reactor. The massive mecha instantly flew into the air, flying backward for more than 10 meters, breaking 2 lampposts in succession, and finally crashing into a double-decker bus parked on the side of the road. The bus was cut in half, and glass shattered all over the ground. Lee Zuguo's mind showed a translucent panel. Fans and popularity points began to jump, but this increase was not enough. Lee Zuguo walked toward the pile of scrap metal. Obadiah was frantically pushing and pulling the control stick in the cockpit. The ironmonger struggled to get up, the hydraulic device on its left arm emitting an unbearable screech. Lee Zuguo walked up to the mecha, reached out, and dug his fingers directly into the thick alloy armor. The sound of twisting metal rang through the entire Los Angeles neighborhood as the 10-centimeter thick bulletproof shell was pried open bit by bit. The internal circuits snapped one by one. Obadiah's face, covered in cold sweat, was completely exposed to the air. His bald head reflected the searchlight. He opened his mouth wide, but could not make a sound. Lee Zuguo leaned down, grabbed Obadiah by the collar with one hand, pulled the heavy man out of the mecha, and tossed him onto the open ground nearby. Obadiah fell face first, unable to get up for a long time. Popularity points, plus 3200 fans, plus 850. The numbers on the panel increased significantly, and the surrounding flashes connected into one, bright as day. Lee Zuguo turned around, faced the camera, and waved his right hand. A deafening scream erupted from the crowd. The Mark III's right foot thruster finally restarted. Tony flew over unsteadily, landed beside Lee Zuguo, and his visor popped open, revealing his face covered in abrasions and oil stains. Hey Star-Spangled Boy, I was only 3 seconds away from finishing him. Tony pointed at the wreckage of the ironmonger on the ground, still sharp-tongued. Lee Zuguo withdrew his hand and said, "Yeah, 3 seconds is enough for him to smash you into a pulp. Then we could attend the funeral in good order, I even thought of the eulogy." Tony rolled his eyes. Stark Industries stock will drop 3 percentage points tomorrow because of that sentence, you have to pay me. Superhero popularity points plus 5000 from Iron Man. Note: the higher the superhero favorability bond, the higher the popularity points provided. Still sharp-tongued, but deep down, Lee Zuguo kind of liked Tony, because in a sense, they were the same kind of people. Both liked women, fame, and money. A low engine roar came from the sky. A Quinjet hovered above the street. The airflow blew the dust on the ground everywhere. A rope descended. A man wearing a star-spangled uniform slid down to the ground, with a shield on his back. Captain America Steve Rogers. He looked around, his gaze lingering on the wreckage of the Ironmonger and Obadiah for a few seconds. "Stark, are you in trouble?" Tony pointed at Lee Zuguo. "American sweetheart, you're late. This star-spangled fanatic, just like you, stole my job. He didn't even leave me a complete part to study." Steve looked at Lee Zuguo. His gaze scanned the uniform up and down. "Good job, Homelander, but next time you take action, try to minimize the damage to public property. That bus is an asset of the city hall." Lee Zuguo spread his hands. "Property. The only valuable thing here is Stark's mouth. If I didn't dismantle this pile of scrap, Mr. Stark would only be developing new weapons in his coffin tomorrow." Tony pointed at Lee Zuguo. "Hey, don't think that just because you're wearing a tight suit with the flag's colors, you can boss me around. My armor just had a small malfunction, just a bug in the system update." Steve stepped forward and patted Tony on the shoulder. "The malfunction almost cost you your life. It's not that hard to admit someone helped you, Tony." Lee Zuguo couldn't be bothered to pay attention to Tony's stubbornness. He watched the popularity points jumping constantly on the panel. The effect of this show was far beyond expectations. The media's broadcast van was still working. A female reporter, accompanied by a cameraman, jogged through the police cordon and thrust the microphone directly in front of the three of them. "Mr. Homelander. The mysterious Iron Man. Captain. May I ask if you have formed a new superhero team?" Tony immediately took a step back. "Absolutely not. I work alone. I don't team up with spandex-wearing Boy Scouts or guys in capes." Steve blocked the camera. "Ma'am, this is a dangerous area. Please step back." The reporter ignored Steve entirely, desperately shoving the microphone toward Lee Zuguo. "Mr. Lee Zuguo, you just tore apart that giant mech with your bare hands. May I ask how you always manage to appear just in time?" Lee Zuguo absolutely loved this female reporter. He straightened his back, faced the camera, and flashed a row of white teeth. This smile had been practiced countless times. "Everyone, please calm down. Please maintain a safe distance." His voice, precisely controlled by super hearing, could be heard clearly across half the street even without a microphone. He looked into the camera lens, his gaze affectionate and focused, as if he were looking directly into the soul of every citizen in Los Angeles through the screen. "Today, I saw children crying and streets burning. I am very sorry. I am sorry I couldn't be here sooner." Lee Zuguo lowered his head slightly, showing a hint of perfectly measured remorse. "Iron Man is very impressive, but inside that armor is just an ordinary person. As for me, since heaven has bestowed this power upon me, it is my responsibility to ensure that such tragedies do not happen again." Although Tony thought the term Iron Man sounded a bit cliché, it seemed unexpectedly fitting for his identity. Lee Zuguo extended his hand, pointing at the worshipful citizens around him, his voice becoming passionate. "You are the bedrock of this country. You shouldn't have to live in the shadow of steel monsters, nor should you worry about being caught in explosions on your way home from work. As long as I am still in this world, and as long as I can still hear your calls, I promise you. He paused and placed his right hand over his chest. I will protect you, because you are the true heroes. Popularity, plus 8567. Fans, plus 2365. Popularity level, Blue Star North America emerging. The panel in his mind flickered frantically, golden numbers blurring into a stream. Lee Zuguo could feel that as these numbers grew, his senses became sharper, and every cell in his body was rejoicing. This feeling was more addictive than any drug. Homelander. Homelander. Someone in the crowd started chanting, and soon the sound swelled into a unified tidal wave. Fans plus 99 plus 108 plus 123. Popularity plus 168 plus 200. Yes. That's it. Call out to me, worship me, believe in me. Lee Zuguo laughed. He realized that he seemed to have started liking this feeling of being watched, needed, and the center of attention. From acting at the beginning to enjoying it now. Tony Stark let out a disdainful snort inside his armor. Oh, come on. Which outdated campaign team wrote his speech? You are the true heroes. Even Rogers wouldn't be able to say something like that. Steve did not agree with Tony's assessment. I actually think that line is quite good. Tony forgot that Steve actually ate this stuff up, but looking at Lee Zuguo facing the camera, he couldn't help but speak up sourly. You enjoy this. Being surrounded by a bunch of people with cameras and microphones asking stupid questions. Lee Zuguo turned his head to look at him. It's better than being pinned to the ground by an old bald man. Don't you think, Mr. Stark? Tony was choked up for a moment and turned to look at Steve. Captain, doesn't S.H.I.E.L.D. regulate unlicensed vigilantes like this? He almost tore down an entire street just now. Steve's expression was serious. S.H.I.E.L.D. will evaluate his actions. But as of now, he prevented a disaster. Steve looked at Homelander again. Homelander, we need to talk about your abilities and your motives. Homelander put away the smile he had for the camera. Of course, I'd be happy to chat, but that bald director of yours seems to have a lot of opinions about me, so. A piercing siren sounded in the distance. A large number of New York police and S.H.I.E.L.D. agents were arriving. Black SUVs surrounded the entire block. Agent Coulson got out of a car, straightened his suit, and walked toward the three people in the center of the scene. Mr. Stark, Captain Rogers, and this. Coulson looked at Lee Zuguo and opened a file folder in his hand. Lucian Lee, codename Lee Zuguo. We have conducted some preliminary investigations on you. Tony savored the name. Lucian Lee. That name is dark enough. I suggest you just call yourself Lucifer. Homelander ignored Tony and looked at Coulson. Lucian Lee, this was his English name before he transmigrated. Investigation. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s efficiency is still so slow. I've already dismantled this big guy into parts, and only now have you arrived at the scene to set up the cordon. Coulson maintained a professional smile. We are better at handling the aftermath, for example, helping you clean up this mess and ensuring that this video does not cause public panic. Panic. Lee Zuguo pointed at the cheering crowd around them. You call this panic? They love me. Under the gaze of the female reporter, who was nearly fainting with adoration, he suddenly took off, hovering in midair. His stars and stripes cape hung down, and everyone's eyes followed him as he rose. Tony looked up, his mask closing again. What is he trying to do now? Perform aerial acrobatics. Lee Zuguo looked down at the street below. The sound of sirens, the roar of helicopter rotors, the reporter's broadcast, the sound of people's heartbeats, everything was clearly audible. Outside the cordon, a few young college students were frantically recording with their phones. So cool. Did you see his moves when he dismantled the mech? It was easier than taking apart Legos. Iron Man was beaten helpless just a moment ago, and he took it out instantly when he came out. I'm going to post this video on Twitter and YouTube. It'll definitely hit 1 million views. Lee Zuguo listened to the discussions in the distance. Super hearing brought all the sounds of the entire block into his ears. These sounds were the source of his power. The system's setup was straightforward. The more fanatical the fans, the higher the popularity, and the stronger the abilities and prize pools he could unlock. Therefore, he didn't fly away immediately. Instead, he glided at low altitude over the street, enjoying the cheers, the dense array of cameras, and the flashing magnesium lights. He even slightly adjusted the angle of his cape, letting the light from the searchlights weave over his body. It wasn't until the rate of popularity increase slowed down that the sonic boom sounded again. Lee Zuguo turned into a red and blue streak of light, instantly disappearing into the night sky, leaving behind only the wreckage on the ground and the remains of Ironmonger, which were still sparking on their own. A reporter shouted into the camera, "He's flown away." Lee Zuguo ended tonight's battle in an incredibly shocking way. Is he a savior, or an uncontrollable monster? In midair, Lee Zuguo broke through the clouds, the moonlight spilling onto him. He was a bit excited but held it back. He summoned the system panel. Character: Lucian Lee. Title: Homelander. Abilities: Super Strength, Super Flight, Heat Vision, Super Hearing, X-ray Vision, Super Durability, Super Intelligence. Field can only cover self. Popularity: 103,589. Superhero popularity: 10,000. Fans: 56,898. Popularity level: Blue Star emerging. Popularity and superhero popularity had reached the standard for strengthening and lottery draws. Unfortunately, except for some fanatical fans, the popularity produced by most fans was not stable. Often it would take days or even a week to produce a little. After all, there comes a day when even heroes are forgotten. Lee Zuguo had a fruitful harvest this time. Of the superhero popularity, 5,000 was provided by Tony, 1,000 from Steve, and the other 4,000 from mutants. He had learned about mutants. Because of the suppression by a certain bald director, the development of mutants in this universe was much slower. It had even become a department that received reports to specifically deal with mutants. But Lee Zuguo didn't care about that. As long as they were his fans and could provide popularity, he didn't care what they were. He needed a bigger stage and more viewers. Lee Zuguo chose without hesitation. Strengthened super durability, draw. Popularity points 100,000. Super durability strengthening. Superhero popularity points 10,000. Junior superhero prize pool drawing. In an instant, Lee Zuguo felt countless powers surging endlessly from within his body, constantly strengthening him. This was the feeling. He was feeling a bit hot-headed right now. Unlocked derivative ability. Impact resistance field. Impact resistance field. A micron-level biological force field spontaneously forms around the body, buffering kinetic impacts. It automatically extends to protect clothing worn close to the body, though its buffering efficiency is halved against energy attacks. Lee Zuguo needed more popularity. Super durability and adding an impact resistance field were far from enough. Super durability only covered the body surface, he still had internal weaknesses. Only all-encompassing super durability, or even a steel body, could give him a sense of security. But the popularity points required for that were massive. Congratulations on drawing temporary compound V times 3. This stuff wasn't very useful to Lee Zuguo, unless it was the original compound V that could eliminate his own weaknesses and rival Soldier Boy. But it could be used to ramp up the intensity for certain people. All in all, it wasn't bad. Midtown Manhattan. Inside an apartment with a monthly rent of $4,800. Lee Zuguo was draped over the back of the sofa, with a half-eaten bag of chips and a few cans of soda sitting on the coffee table. The TV was still on, and the station was looping the street spectacle from 30 minutes ago. His phone lit up. 27 missed calls and over 100 unread text messages. Media interview requests made up 2/3 of them, and the rest were from various people claiming to be agents, public relations consultants, or brand strategists. They smelled blood and swarmed in, more sensitive than sharks. Lee Zuguo scrolled through them one by one, his thumb stopping on an email. Hello Mr. Lee Zuguo, I am James Edgar, Senior Vice President of Pacific Film and Entertainment Group. We are very interested in your public image and hope to discuss a long-term strategic partnership with you in person. Attached is our preliminary business proposal. Below the signature was the company's logo, next to which was a dense list of produced films. All of them were well-known commercial blockbusters. Lee Zuguo tossed his phone onto the sofa and leaned back against the chair, staring at the ceiling. A superhuman who could tear apart armor with his bare hands and deflect armor-piercing rounds, their first reaction wasn't to run, but to do the math. How did that famous quote go? With 300% profit, capital dares to risk the gallows. The profit margin of a superhero IP. 300% wouldn't even cover it. Lee Zuguo crossed his legs, this thought had been swirling in his mind for several days. Relying solely on saving people on the street and beating up a few punks, the growth rate of popularity points was no different from a snail crawling. There were only so many idiots popping up in New York. After beating them up, he had to wait in line for the next batch. Moreover, the hype came and went even faster. Yesterday's headline was today's birdcage liner. But this email pried open a door. Movies, reality shows, comics, merchandise, variety shows, social media. Every track was an independent pipeline for popularity. Every channel was a popularity harvesting machine. The audience didn't need to see him fly with their own eyes, just sitting on the sofa and scrolling through their phones was enough. The global box office audience for a hit movie was more than all the fans he could accumulate by saving people all over the world. And it wasn't just him, he could form a team, just like the Avengers. Everyone had their own target audience, and 7 tributaries would eventually converge into the same sea. The popularity pool for him, the leader. But, the moment this thought popped up, Lee Zuguo almost laughed out loud. That business empire from the boys in his past life. Operating superheroes as commodities, squeezing out every drop of traffic. Of course, that bot was rotten to the core, and under the skin of the 7 were all lunatics and perverts. Marvel couldn't be played like that. Teammates didn't necessarily have to be good fighters, but they had to be reliable, at least maintaining their persona in front of the public. As for a savior, one was enough. If one team member's reputation collapsed, it would implicate the entire brand. That wasn't just losing fans, it was a chain reaction explosion. Therefore, he had to choose good people, or at least choose smart people. Homelander picked up his phone and dialed the number. It was answered after 1.5 rings. Mr. Lee Zuguo. It is a great honor. I've read your proposal. Lee Zuguo hadn't actually read it, but it didn't matter. That's great. What do you think of our cooperation framework? No. The other end of the line paused. May I ask which part specifically? All of it. Lee Zuguo changed his lying position, one hand resting on the sofa armrest. Your idea is to sign me as a spokesperson, film a few movies, give me a small cut of the box office, and keep the lion's share for yourselves, right? This pause was longer. He could hear people on the other side exchanging opinions in low voices. The call was clearly on speakerphone, and an entire decision-making team was sitting nearby. In the conference room of Pacific Film and Entertainment Group, James Edgar gripped his pen and exchanged a look with the chief legal officer opposite him. He had been in Hollywood for 23 years, signed A-list stars, and negotiated $10 billion IP licenses. He had seen all kinds of client temperaments. But the person on the other end of the line had just torn a several meter tall steel mech into scrap metal in front of media cameras a few hours ago. He truly hadn't seen this kind of client before, and the other party could flip the table at any minute. Mr. Lee Zuguo, our sincerity is absolutely sufficient. The profit-sharing ratio can be further. Let me state my conditions. Lee Zuguo interrupted him. First, help me create a company and name it VOUGHT, VOUGHT. Second, I want absolute controlling interest. What to film, how to film it, who to find, I call the shots. You provide the personnel, the channels, and the operations, but the decision-making power remains with me. Third, this company won't just do film and television. I want to form a superhero team, 7 people, and VOUGHT will be fully responsible for their commercial operations and brand management. Lee Zuguo didn't care if the company would be hollowed out or infiltrated, because as long as he was there, he could create another VOUGHT at any time. Even if the capital behind the 6 major Hollywood studios and media giants were dissatisfied, so what? That method of eating people only applied to ordinary people. Homelander was the Homelander, no capitalist could escape his super hearing and heat vision. In the conference room, the chief legal officer's pen dropped onto the table. James pressed the speakerphone button. Mr. Lee Zuguo, the scale involved in your concept far exceeds typical entertainment projects. I won't make you work for free. Lee Zuguo stood up and walked to the window, the night view of Manhattan condensed on the glass. You can try it first. Then regarding the decision-making power. Do you think someone stronger than Superman would let others make decisions for him? The other end of the line went completely silent. James Edgar keenly sensed an opportunity. This was the precise judgment of an old fox who had lived in the Hollywood jungle for over 20 years after weighing the chips. But, is there any significance to this name? You don't need to know, you just need to remember one thing. What? Follow me, and the money you earn will exceed everyone's imagination. Lee Zuguo said slowly. As for those who oppose me, you'd better make sure their health insurance covers all departments. A dry laugh came from the other end of the line. I need to go through the process of reporting to the board, but in my personal judgment, I believe we have a basis for cooperation. I'll give you 48 hours. Lee Zuguo hung up the phone. System prompt. Detected host is building a popularity harvesting matrix. Superhero team. Subsystem activated. Subsystem. Superhero team. A new template appeared in Lee Zuguo's eyes. 7 blank avatars, the one at the very top already filled with his image, the remaining 6 empty. Superhero team. Member limit temporary, 7 people, including captain. 2. Enrollment requirements. Target must possess quantifiable potential for public influence, and must be bound upon confirmation by the captain personally. 3. Core mechanism popularity siphon. When these 4 words popped up, Lee Zuguo's fingers stopped, and he looked down. Popularity points obtained by team members in any public setting will automatically have 25% extracted into the captain's popularity pool. This extraction does not affect the member's own ability growth. IV. Brand effect bonus. When the team's overall popularity reaches a specific threshold, the team can expand its sub-teams and member limit. Only 25%. Lee Zuguo was very dissatisfied, but having something is better than nothing. After all, popularity is generated every moment. Once the 7 is formed, even at just 25%, the harvested popularity points will be massive. What kind of movies to shoot? Shoot himself. That would be too monotonous. The audience's attention span is like a goldfish's, dispersing in 3 seconds. If one superhero carries the show alone, the audience will get aesthetic fatigue after 2 or 3 movies. But what if it's a superhero team? 7 people. Each has their own abilities, each has their own storylines. There will be conflicts, romances, betrayals, and sacrifices between characters. The audience will argue endlessly over shipping characters, they will vote and fight over who is the strongest. Every argument is traffic, every comment is popularity points. The 7. And he stands at the top of the pyramid. The team's leader, the center of the lens, the protagonist of the story. How to fill the remaining 6 spots. This world is not short of superpowered individuals. Mutants, Inhumans, products of various experimental accidents, Bot is responsible for packaging, promotion, and monetization. All popularity points will eventually flow to him, because he is the boss, he is the pillar, he is the only irreplaceable one. Lee Zuguo finished the milk in his hand in one gulp. This is the life I wanted. The next day, North American headlines were occupied by 3 hot topics: Homelander, Iron Man, and Stark Industries. New York News Times, a female reporter reporting live from the scene. Stark Industries will hold an emergency press conference at Stark Tower at noon today, at which time Tony Stark himself will make a formal response regarding last night's incident. The camera cut to the entrance of Stark Tower. The female reporter and the broadcast van had already blocked half the street. Stark Tower, first floor press conference hall. The camera flashes hadn't stopped since the moment Tony stood in front of the podium. Hundreds of reporters packed the entire hall, the red lights of the cameras forming a C. Tony wore a dark gray custom suit. The bruise on the corner of his left eye was covered with foundation, but when the lights hit it, the purplish-blue outline could still be seen. His right hand was in his trouser pocket, and his left hand held a white card. The card was given to him by Coulson 10 minutes ago. In the 3rd row, Coulson sat straight, his suit impeccable, with Colonel Rhodes sitting beside him, his military uniform crisp. Both of their gazes were fixed on Tony. Tony swept a glance at the heads below. The front row was filled with ace reporters from major news agencies and TV stations. Mixed in the middle were a few military industry analysts he recognized, and the last 2 rows were seated with some strangers with overly upright postures, people from S.H.I.E.L.D. He looked down at the card in his hand. There were only 3 lines of text on it. The robot that appeared in Los Angeles last night was an experimental security device from Stark Industries. I was personally on my private yacht in the Pacific Ocean at the time and had no knowledge of the incident. Iron Man is my bodyguard, real name cannot be disclosed. The script was watertight. As long as he read it, S.H.I.E.L.D. would handle everything else. Chain of evidence, witness testimony, surveillance records, the whole set. Simple, safe, boring. Tony flipped the card over and back again. The female reporter below couldn't wait any longer. Mr. Stark. Regarding Iron Man, who fought on the streets of Manhattan last night, some witnesses claim that you were the one inside the armor. Mr. Stark. What exactly happened between you and Obadiah Stane? Is this an internal power struggle at Stark Industries? Please respond. Homelander's popularity on social media has far exceeded Stark Industries. What are your thoughts on this? Tony's thumb stopped at the edge of the card. Homelander. That fool, dressed like the Star-Spangled Boy, whose white teeth were straighter than a GQ model's when he smiled. When he stood in front of the camera last night and said, "You are the real heroes," the crowd below went crazy. Completely crazy, and now he was a little crazy too. Coulson coughed twice, not loudly, but the signal was clear. Read the card, read it now. Rhodes also shook his head slightly at Tony, the meaning clear. Tony, don't be stupid. However, as a billionaire, playboy, someone who enjoyed the spotlight and was arrogant, Tony didn't even hesitate. Everything you said is correct. Tony looked up and scanned the room. Whatever experimental security device, whatever bodyguard, it's all nonsense. Coulson's right hand had already reached into his inner suit pocket, and Rhodes half stood up, only to be pushed back down by the officer next to him. The fact is, Tony pulled the microphone 2 centimeters closer. I am Iron Man. The whole place exploded. Hundreds of reporters stood up simultaneously, chairs toppled over, flashes were so dense they created continuous exposure, the entire press hall was blindingly bright. Mr. Stark, are you saying you personally wore that armor to fight? Did you start building the armor while you were captured in Afghanistan? How do you respond to the military's questioning of private armed forces? Homelander saved your life last night, do you admit it? Questions piled upon questions, waves of sound drowning each other out. Coulson slowly sat back, pulled his hand out from his suit, and said into his communicator, "Director, Tony has admitted it." Meanwhile, Lee Zuguo also saw the headlines. He was not surprised at all by the news of Tony revealing himself as Iron Man. It would have been problematic if he hadn't revealed his identity. Lee Zuguo was still a hot topic chased by the media, but being diverted was certain, which could be seen from the slowing growth of popularity points in the system. Not to mention that Tony had the massive entity of Stark Industries behind him, he only needed to announce his identity, and the various departments below him would create hype for him. Another point, mecha is a man's romance, and it is also sustainably manufacturable. This gave everyone a fantasy that in the future, perhaps everyone could become Iron Man, flying through the sky and burrowing into the earth. But becoming Homelander is impossible. Thinking of this, Lee Zuguo almost forgot that he still had to go to Pacific Pictures today. Let some people who can't recognize reality know what the full Homelander means. Pacific Pictures Group headquarters. The floor-to-ceiling windows of the conference room faced the Los Angeles skyline, and the afternoon sun made the entire oak conference table glisten. 9 people sat in 12 chairs, with 3 left empty. James Edgar stood in front of the projection screen, the red dot of his laser pointer resting on a line of text. Vought International. Everyone, this is our soon-to-be-established wholly owned subsidiary. He pushed the folder to the center of the table. Independent operation, independent accounting, focused on the full chain development of superhero IP. There was silence for 3 seconds. Harold Mitchell, 62, one of the co-founders of Pacific Pictures, spoke first from the second chair on the left. James, are you crazy? We are a film group, not a circus. You want to take real money to support a guy who flies around in spandex. This is not a circus, Harold. James said, this is a commercial entity with an estimated annual revenue exceeding $3 billion. Estimated. Linda Warren, 47, the group's head of legal and risk control, chimed in from the end of the long table. It's all estimates with no historical data to back it up. How long has this Homelander even been in the public eye, and you want to set up a separate company for him? James, you haven't even finished the due diligence. And there are compliance issues. Harold continued, how do we define the legal framework for an individual with superpowers? Who is responsible if he hurts someone? How do we handle insurance? James didn't answer immediately. He turned off the laser pointer and scanned the people present. 9 people. 4 clearly in favor, 3 opposed, 2 abstaining. 3 votes against were enough to ruin the whole thing. The company bylaws were clear. The establishment of a wholly owned subsidiary required a 2/3 majority. Everyone. The conference room door was pulled open from the outside with one hand. Lee Zuguo walked in, his stars and stripes cape trailing an arc behind him. 9 pairs of eyes turned simultaneously. Some had seen him on TV, but no one had seen him in person. The Homelander on the screen was a symbol, a flag that could be turned off with a remote control. The one in front of them was different. Everyone present was experienced. Harold had dined with Pentagon generals, and Linda had won antitrust cases in federal court, but no one had ever sat at the same table as a guy who could burn through steel plates with his eyes. Lee Zuguo didn't sit down. He stood at one end of the long table, less than 4 steps away from Harold, wearing a standard smile, a perfect curve, perfect charisma. Everyone, I am Homelander. James mentioned to me that the board still has some concerns about the establishment of VOT International. So I wanted to come and chat with you all in person. Harold leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. Decades of experience told him that any occasion where the person involved had to come and chat in person was essentially pressure. Mr. Homelander, I personally admire your abilities very much, but admiration is one thing, and business is another. Pacific Pictures is not a charity, every investment we make. Return on investment. Lee Zuguo finished for him. Of course, that's reasonable, but Mr. Harold, have you ever thought about a question? What question? Tony Stark revealed his identity as Iron Man this afternoon. In 3 hours, Stark Industries stock rose by 12%, his social media following grew by 23 million, and Fox, CNN, and BBC are lining up for exclusive interviews. Immortal. A suit of iron, worth that price. Lee Zuguo tilted his head. Then what about me? I can fly, I can stop missiles, and last night on national television, I ripped apart a rogue Iron Man suit with my bare hands. What do you think I'm worth? Linda moved her lips but ultimately didn't speak. Harold wasn't convinced. He had been in this business too long and had heard too many pretty stories. The numbers are impressive, but Stark comes from a background as an arms dealer, and his business empire has tangible support. What about you? An IP. IPs can go out of style, Mr. Homelander. 3 months ago, no one had heard your name, and 3 months from now, perhaps. Harold fell silent because Lee Zuguo stopped smiling. A second ago, he was the superhero welcomed by North America, gentle, kind, reassuring. The next second, he was looking at Harold with a blank expression. Lee Zuguo's patience had limits. Did they really take him for Superman? I am Homelander. The entire conference room was terrifyingly quiet. In a daze, Harold seemed to see Homelander's eyes glowing red, and the scene of himself being shot through in the next second. He froze in his chair, a layer of cold sweat breaking out on his forehead, and his body made a judgment before his brain could react. He raised his hand. Mr. Lee Zuguo, I think you've convinced me. I agree to the proposal. The rest of the board members raised their hands one after another to agree to the proposal. Lee Zuguo blinked, and his smile returned, with the exact same curve. It would have been better if it had been like this from the start, these capitalists. Where was I? These words were spoken lightly, making everyone's scalp tingle, except for James, who had been a fan of Lee Zuguo from the beginning. Lee Zuguo sat in a chair and started painting a big picture for them. Oh right, my value. Everyone, I'm not good at making PPTs, data analysis, or market forecasting. James is better at that than I am. But there is one thing I can guarantee. After VOT International is established, every penny you invest will have a return. Not because I can fly. Not because I'm invulnerable, but because this country needs me. After speaking, he smiled again, this time even more brightly than any previous time. Harold wiped his forehead. He was sitting right under the air conditioning, so he shouldn't have been sweating. Soon, it was passed unanimously. James Edgar was the first to sign. VOT International is now officially in the preparation process. Mr. Homelander, regarding the choice of CEO. You do it. James was stunned for half a second, then overjoyed. It was worth the risk of being fired to have voted first. Lee Zuguo had already walked to the door. I need someone who knows the business to handle the front end for me. You are in charge of VOT's affairs. Lee Zuguo had countless ways to leave, but this time he chose the simplest one. Taking the elevator like the company's employees. And when the employees in the company saw Homelander in his uniform and cape waiting for the elevator with them, they also had expressions of disbelief. A female employee was the first to speak, unable to help herself. Sir, excuse me, are you Homelander? Homelander opened his arms and smiled. Ma'am, obviously. Mr. Homelander, your glutes seem better than Captain America's, can I? Meanwhile on social media. The promotion for Iron Man was overwhelming, and Stark Industries' stock rose in a straight line. At the same time that afternoon, after Lee Zuguo's logical and well-founded negotiation, Pacific Pictures passed and registered VOT with astonishing efficiency. In just one day, VOT went from an empty shell to a large, tangible company located in Manhattan. The promotion across online media and social media, and the Internet Army, were all in place in one step. Homelander joins VOT International. The topic topped the trending searches on every platform less than 10 minutes after it was posted. An unknown company, with the support of Homelander, emerged out of nowhere. Official announcement. Homelander has officially joined VOT International. Social media reposts broke 100,000 within 20 minutes, and the comment section was filled with nothing but question marks. What kind of company is VOT International? I looked it up. The business registration date is today. This isn't a scam, is it? However, before the wave of skepticism could even ignite, Pacific Pictures had already started pushing content out on behalf of VOT. Brand image videos, interview teasers, partnership announcements, one after another, the pace was rapid. The headquarters office of VOT International. Located in a central office building in Midtown Manhattan, it wasn't just a few floors, but the entire building. James is the CEO of VOT International, in his early 40s, wearing a tailored suit, his hair combed perfectly, standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, surveying the streets below. He was smart enough to know who the real boss of VOT was, so the most important thing now was to let Homelander see his efficiency and capability. That was why, on his first day at VOT, James made a decision. The assistant walked in quietly. How many resumes have we received? For the position of Homelander's personal secretary, as of just now, 472. James didn't turn around. Send them all to me, I want to personally vet them. The assistant handed over the pre-screened list. James took the list and began flipping through the resumes, moving very quickly, most were swiped away in 3 seconds. Appearance, figure, and education were placed first. James needed a professional secretary who could soothe Homelander when he was angry. In the eyes of Hollywood giants, beauty and unspoken rules were the most normal things in the world. He locked onto 2 resumes he was somewhat satisfied with. The first one. Name. Natasha Romanoff. Her work history was clean, 6 languages were listed in the language column, and the remarks section read, proficient in corporate information management and high-end business reception. In the attached photo was a rare beauty, red lips curled lazily, a dark gray pencil skirt wrapping around perfectly proportioned curves, white shirt with 2 buttons undone, not too much, not too little, just enough to make people want to take another look. The second one. Name. Raven, just graduated from New York University, formerly worked as a model, her appearance and figure were also top tier. There was a sentence at the end of the resume, Homelander's super fan. James picked up the phone on the desk and dialed the assistant. Schedule these 2 people for an interview tomorrow at 9 in the morning. When Natasha received the interview notification, she was in the car. The message was in a standard format, sent by VOT International Hour, with time, location, and dress code requirements, nothing missing. She placed her phone face down on her lap. Outside the car window was the evening traffic of Manhattan. She had already memorized the briefing for this mission. Originally, her infiltration mission was to approach Iron Man Tony of Stark Industries. Due to Homelander's performance during this period, director Nick Fury's attention toward him had risen exponentially. This Homelander, who could tear through steel and was suspected to be a Superman or a mutant, was the true threat to the U.S. Nick Fury urgently wanted to control information and weaknesses regarding Homelander, so he sent no fewer than 10 SHIELD agents to infiltrate VOT. Natasha flipped the phone over, the screen showed the VOT official homepage, and the background image was that promotional photo of Lee Zuguo. This blonde young man smiled very handsomely, smiling equally at every stranger who clicked onto this page. Natasha stared at that photo, going through the contact path in her mind. She was going in as a secretary, the person she would be directly dealing with was Homelander, it was a bit threatening. As for James, he was just a capitalist, she had never cared about him. 8 o'clock. VOT headquarters. The interview was scheduled in a small conference room on the 22nd floor of VOT headquarters. Natasha arrived 8 minutes early, but when she entered, James was already sitting inside. There was another woman inside. Her appearance and figure looked perfect, she was undoubtedly her competitor. Mystique's originally relaxed mindset also became vigilant. This woman's appearance could actually compare to the one she had carefully chosen. Natasha sat down opposite, her back straight, hands folded on the table, her attitude very upright. James held the resume and asked as usual. 6 languages, to what extent can you handle them? Business negotiation level. Why did you choose a company that was founded only 2 months ago? Natasha answered directly in Russian. Because a new company has more room for growth, and who wouldn't want to work with a superhero? At least I want to try. Just at this moment, the elevator door at the end of the corridor opened. Lee Zuguo walked out wearing his uniform, followed by a management team. One person was holding a venue confirmation form, head down, talking to the person beside them. Natasha quickly sized up Lee Zuguo, and a question surfaced in her mind. Does this Mr. Superman wear his uniform everywhere? While Natasha was thinking, Raven had already stood up and ran over, excitedly. This seemed a bit abnormal to Natasha, but she also felt that fans were creatures that couldn't be viewed with common sense. At this moment, Lee Zuguo was discussing the upcoming press conference with Vought's agents. Previously, his traffic and fans were all organic, lacking cohesion. At first, saving people might get media coverage and crowds taking photos, but once it happened too often, he was no different from a firefighter. In other words, people got used to it. Not to mention that some media and online outlets had people behind them intentionally distorting facts to consume dark traffic. What Vought's management team needed to do was bring their own camera crew, filming in high definition to ensure that every time Lee Zuguo saved someone, it was captured. And every time he saved someone or defeated an enemy, the pose had to be the coolest, most graceful, and photogenic. Finally, invest in publicity and create buzz. Establishing the company and even Homelander's personal accounts would increase the fans' cohesion and sense of honor. This was the current optimal plan. At this time, Raven had already rushed over, excitedly, and several security guards hadn't been able to stop her. Lee Zuguo, I'm your fan. Could you please give me an autograph? Lee Zuguo was about to get angry at being interrupted, but seeing the woman take out her phone and turn on the camera, he subconsciously smiled again. Of course, no problem, beautiful lady. It's my honor. James breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing this. From yesterday's negotiation, he knew the man before him wasn't as easy to talk to as he appeared. He hurriedly ran over and apologized. Sorry, sir. She came to apply for the position of your secretary and is also your super fan, so I wasn't able to stop her. It's okay, James. Lee Zuguo signaled that it was fine and incidentally signed an autograph for the female fan in front of him. Natasha observed. Although James was the CEO, the one truly in charge was Lee Zuguo. James quickly introduced Raven's resume to Lee Zuguo, as well as Natasha, who had followed behind. Which one to choose as the personal secretary and assistant would be decided by Lee Zuguo himself. Lee Zuguo felt the name Raven sounded a bit familiar, but the face wasn't, but he definitely recognized the one behind. Black Widow infiltrating Vought International. Vought Tower Executive Office. Lee Zuguo sat on the sofa, Raven and Natasha sat opposite him, while James stood awkwardly to the side. To be precise, James had set a challenge. A challenge regarding a public relations crisis, which the two interviewees were to answer. Obviously, Natasha's ruthless answer better aligned with the company's interests, while Raven, the fresh college graduate, fell short. Lee Zuguo also understood why Black Widow wanted to infiltrate Vought. Clearly, in the eyes of that motherfooler, he was more dangerous and uncontrollable than Tony. However, he didn't care. He currently only valued an employee's capability. He would use them for now and replace them when someone suitable came along. Mr. Homelander, which lady do you think is more suitable for the secretary position? Lee Zuguo raised his index finger and shook it. No, James. I don't have to choose, and Vought isn't short on funds. James, an old fox, immediately understood that Homelander had taken a liking to both, and he instantly put on a smiling face. Of course, Mr. Homelander is right. Congratulations to you both. Your professional skills are excellent. From now on, you are members of Vought. I will have an assistant take you to get your badges in a moment. That wasn't actually what Lee Zuguo meant, but he couldn't be bothered to explain. The next day at noon, the Vought Tower press room was packed. There were even 55 extra people standing in the aisles, with cameras and microphones set up like a missile launcher array. CNN sent 2 teams, and Fox sent 3. A front-page reporter from the New York Times sat in the first row, the title bar flashing with a cursor. In the center of the stage, a red VOT logo hung on the backdrop. The lights in the room dimmed for 3 seconds. A beam of white light shone vertically down from the center of the ceiling. Lee Zuguo slowly descended from the beam of light to the podium. He was wearing that custom deep blue cape uniform, and the Star-Spangled Eagle emblem on his chest shone blindingly under the spotlight. Without giving the reporters any time, Lee Zuguo began speaking directly. I know you didn't come here today to listen to a guy in a cape talk nonsense, so I plan to save everyone some time. As of today, I have officially joined VOT International. The sound of shutters exploded. Lee Zuguo didn't even blink, staring at the camera flashes as he continued. But that's not the point. The point is for every criminal on the streets of New York who is currently planning a home invasion, armed assault, kidnapping, or extortion. He tilted his head slightly and softened his smile toward the camera. Your good days of doing evil end here. Someone in the press room gasped. Applause and shutter sounds filled the room, with more momentum than Stark Industries had a few days ago. Natasha stood behind the side curtain, holding the VOT badge she had just received. In her view, Homelander was more like a showman. Just like when he saved people before, he would pose for photos without any hesitation. Raven stood beside her, clutching her folder to her chest, her eyes full of envy. Since the death of her beloved Destiny, her emotions rarely fluctuated this much. Homelander was shining, that kind of righteous, unhidden light that placed himself before the whole world. He had super strength, so he stood on stage and said, I am the strongest. He could fly, so he flew for everyone to see. He had heat vision, so he. Raven pursed her lips. Mutants couldn't be like this. They had to hide, shrink away, operate in the night, breathe in the shadows like rats in a sewer, and lock their true selves under their skin, never to see the light of day. This was the first lesson she had been taught since she was born. Mystique envied that Homelander could stand on stage, with the world's cameras pointed at him, packaging, displaying, and selling his abilities, and then having everyone love him. Applause, cheers, worship. Why couldn't other mutants be like that? Homelander is just immature, and many people are already eyeing him. Raven's body stiffened. Charles. She subconsciously glanced at Natasha beside her. The other woman was staring at the stage, flipping the badge between her fingers, completely unaware of the abnormality on her side. Don't be nervous, Raven. I'm only speaking to you. The stream of consciousness in her mind was calm, the voice of Charles Xavier echoed in Mystique's mind. Raven replied in her heart, Are you spying on me? Charles. I am spying on him. Raven questioned. What do you mean? I locked onto him a few weeks ago. I spent a lot of time trying to communicate with him, but it was like he was wearing a magnetic helmet, there was absolutely no response. There was a trace of rare confusion in Charles's mental fluctuation. His ability spectrum is extremely broad. Flight, strength, heat projection, enhanced senses, shock-resistant force fields. Any one of these alone would be enough to classify him as a level 4 mutant. All of them combined are comparable to an Omega, and he's an all-rounder who is exceptionally stable. Raven's back pressed against the cold metal frame of the side curtain. Omega level. In the entire X-Mansion archive, there were fewer than 5 names labeled as Omega: Phoenix, Magneto, Storm, Iceman, and Charles himself. But that's not the problem, Charles continued. The problem is that he doesn't know. Doesn't know what? Doesn't know that he is a mutant, doesn't know about the X gene, doesn't know that there is a group of people in this world just like him, and doesn't know that this group is being hunted, registered, and locked in glass prisons while the government decides if they still count as human. Charles stated. He thinks he is Superman, a unique, heaven-sent, fate-chosen Superman. He saves people, accepts cheers, enjoys the cameras. He doesn't feel he needs to hide because he never thinks he is the same kind as anyone else. Raven didn't answer. She asked curiously. Is it possible that he really is Superman? Raven, he is colorful. I can be certain he is our kind. Charles's stream of consciousness slowed down. His mind is not mature. He craves to be loved, craves to be needed, craves to stand in the middle of the crowd and be the only one looked up to. This desire has already been exploited by VOT International. If he is exploited by other forces. An immature Omega-level mutant being pushed in the wrong direction by the wrong people, Raven was too familiar with this picture. She had seen it in Eric. So you want me to get close to him? Charles, I want you to understand him. At the right opportunity, tell him that only mutants can give him love, that we are his own kind. Bring him back to the school, Raven, before anyone else figures him out. Who is anyone else? Shield, the military, and some organizations whose names I haven't read yet. He is too dazzling, Raven. Things that are too dazzling are either treated as lighthouses or targets. Among all mutants, Raven, you are the most suitable for this mission. No, we are just in a cooperative relationship. I don't have that obligation. The connection was broken. Raven couldn't help but want to curse, but seeing the change in Li Zhuguo's eyes, Charles's words gave her great inspiration. Homelander was strong, but he craved love. Natasha turned her head at this moment and glanced at her. You don't look right. Raven forced a smile. The air conditioning is too cold. Natasha didn't say anything more, and her gaze returned to the stage. At this point, the press conference had finished. One could imagine that tomorrow, or perhaps by this afternoon, public opinion would explode. North America ushered in a new era. An era called superheroes. Homelander and Iron Man had truly stepped into the limelight for the first time, exposed to the public eye as household name superheroes. With massive publicity, their fame skyrocketed, even Captain America Steve paled in comparison to them. People are always fond of the new and tired of the old. Shield. Fury slammed the remote onto the table. The circular screen in the conference room was looping news clips from the past 72 hours. On the left, Homelander was hovering over a California wildfire, using his heat vision to cut a firebreak. The firelight illuminated his cape, and the firefighters on the scene applauded in unison. On the right, Homelander was taking photos with fans in Times Square, with the line stretching for 3 blocks. Who can tell me? Fury's single eye swept from the left side of the screen to the right. Is this a disaster relief scene or a Grammy red carpet? No one answered. Hill stood at the end of the long table, her tablet lit up as she flipped through a page of data. Over the past week, Homelander's social media engagement has surpassed Iron Man's by 14% and Captain America's by 37%. Bot International's stock price has risen 11 points. Fury didn't look at her. I wasn't asking about the stock. I know you weren't. Hill finally looked up. But for every point Bot International's market value rises, we lose a bit of leverage. They have already rejected our third cooperation proposal. The wording was very polite. Homelander's schedule is centrally arranged by the group. We are not accepting coordination suggestions from external agencies at this time. On the screen, that wildfire rescue clip looped again. After cutting the firebreak, Homelander didn't leave. Instead, he landed next to a fire truck and patted the shoulder of a fire captain whose face was covered in soot. The fire captain froze for a second, then smiled. The camera happened to capture this moment. Fury's expression was grim. Every time he went out, there were cameras, every time, there was a coincidental, touching moment, and every time, it was broadcast during prime time. This wasn't a hero saving people, this was a reality show actor clocking in for work. Is Natasha in position? Hill nodded. She has entered as a new employee in Bot International's PR department. She has initially gained Homelander's trust and is currently his assistant. Tell her to keep a close watch. Fury turned around to face the screen. I want weaknesses, whether physical or psychological. What does this guy fear? What does he want? And when will he lose control? Hill asked curiously. Do you think he will lose control? Fury picked up the remote on the table and pressed pause. He will definitely lose control. The image froze on Homelander's face. Perfect smile, perfect angle, perfect lighting. Stark Tower, top floor. The same news clip was playing on another screen. Tony Stark was sprawled on the sofa, holding a glass of whiskey with ice. On the screen, Homelander's face was half blocked by Tony's feet, with his slippers propped on the edge of the coffee table, precisely covering that blonde head. Look at this face, always ready to be loved. A classic love-starved personality. A long-term lack of stable emotional attachment objects during growth, filling self-identity through external positive feedback. Tony. Steve Rogers stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, arms crossed over his chest. I'm not here to listen to your psychological profiling. Then what are you here for? To watch his variety show debut with me. Tony pointed at the screen with the remote. You have to admit, this guy's camera presence is better than yours. At least he knows which way his cape should flutter. Steve didn't take the bait. This method is wrong. A hero shouldn't be like this, turning saving people into a PR event, performing in front of the camera, treating every disaster as material to boost exposure. Tony retracted his feet from the coffee table and sat up a bit straighter. Oh, Captain Popsicle wants to give me a moral lesson. Tony stood up from the sofa, walked around the coffee table, and approached the screen. Let me help you recall. 1943, the War Bond Tour. You were wearing that Stars and Stripes spandex suit, performing on stages in 127 cities across the country, pretending to fight Hitler. You gave a thumbs up to the American housewives in the audience, they screamed, you smiled, and the government counted the money in the back. Steve's jaw tightened. That's not the same. How is it different? Tony tossed the remote onto the coffee table. Because you actually went to fight Hitler afterward. So that performance in the beginning doesn't count as a performance. The difference is, Steve's voice lowered, I proved later that that wasn't all there was to it. Right. Tony walked back to the sofa, sat down again, and picked up his glass. So the question is. He pointed the rim of his glass at the frozen, blonde smiling face on the screen. Will this sweetheart have an afterward? Vought Tower, top floor. Inside Lee Zuguo's exclusive floor-to-ceiling window penthouse office. Lee Zuguo was sitting on the sofa, while Raven was on the side reporting the data from these past few days, as well as the olive branches extended from various circles. These included SHIELD, the military, the CIA, and mutants. Lee Zuguo opened his eyes. He knew that at this point in time, the military had been trying to restart the super soldier program, and scientist Bruce Banner had mutated into Hulk after a failed gamma-ray experiment. However, in a few days, Lee Zuguo's popularity points would be enough to evolve from super durability to steel body. Even Hulk wouldn't be able to kill him. The military contacting him was nothing more than wanting to study and utilize him. As for SHIELD and the United States government, there was no need to engage with them for now, he wouldn't become some Avenger. However, he was quite willing to engage with mutants, as they could be recognized by the system as superheroes and provide superhero popularity points. After all, the superhero sub-system was still empty. The arrogant Tony and Steve were obviously not going to join the Seven. In this case, mutants were very suitable. When the time came, Lee Zuguo would give them a new name, Superhuman. Why are the mutants contacting me? Raven spoke according to what Charles had said, and she thought so too. They think that you, Mr. Lee Zuguo, are also one of the mutants, and they believe your situation is dangerous. Lee Zuguo was amused. I am not a mutant. The name, mutant, is too ugly, I call them, superhuman. Superhuman. Raven heard this term for the first time. Lee Zuguo said pleasantly. Superhumans are born to stand in the spotlight like me, become the center of the world, and shoulder the responsibility and mission of saving and leading humanity toward a bright future. For those few superhero popularity points, Lee Zuguo could be considered to have gone to great lengths. Superhero popularity points plus 10000 from Mystique. A question mark slowly appeared in Lee Zuguo's mind. What? Mystique. Although the name sounded familiar, Lee Zuguo really hadn't considered her as Mystique. After all, according to the timeline, Mystique should have already joined the Brotherhood by now. And now she had actually joined Vought International to apply for the position of his secretary. Lee Zuguo had to use his super intelligence to think this through. It seemed necessary for him to recruit a few loyal talents. Otherwise, if the entire Vought International was filled with traitors and he was fighting alone, how would that be any different from him infiltrating Vought by himself? Although he didn't care, he didn't like that feeling either. If it weren't for the fact that Mystique provided 10,000 superhero points as protection money, Lee Zuguo would have shown her exactly what a real Homelander was like right now. Raven asked with some disbelief. Mr. Homelander, do you really think so? You must know that every country considers mutants to be the source of chaos. Lee Zuguo smiled. Of course, but sweetheart, let me correct you once more, they are called superhumans. You should have already heard about the plan for the Seven. Superhero popularity plus 1000 Mystique. Lee Zuguo loved this feeling, he might just know how to win over the hearts of mutants now. Yes, sir, I have heard about it from James. In Raven's eyes, Lee Zuguo was glowing. The hair on her skin stood up, and she almost wanted to confess her identity as a mutant, no, as a superhuman. But she held back. She absolutely could not tell Lee Zuguo now, that would be a betrayal. She needed to find a suitable opportunity to confess. Her long-standing vigilance suppressed the palpitations in her heart, she had to perform meritorious service first. Moreover, in her heart, she ultimately didn't believe that humans would accept a blue-skinned heroine. Lee Zuguo still wanted to say something to see if he could squeeze out a bit more superhero points, but Natasha walked in with a report. On it were the schedules for Homelander's comics, merchandise, movies, and tomorrow's hot topics in the city center. It had to be said that although Natasha was a double agent, she was indeed smart, and Lee Zuguo found her very easy to use. In this regard, Mystique, Raven, couldn't compare. However, Mystique's shapeshifting ability was more useful to Lee Zuguo. He had to find an opportunity to make her show her cards voluntarily. After confirming the schedule for tomorrow, Lee Zuguo dismissed the two and remained in the office alone to pull up the system panel. Character: Lee Zuguo. Title: Lee Zuguo. Abilities: Super Strength, Super Flight, Heat Vision, Super Hearing, X-ray Vision, Super Durability, Super Intelligence. Positioning: can only cover himself. Popularity: 1,035,898. Superhero popularity: 30,000. Fans: 568,989. Popularity level: Blue Star North America household name. There were still too few true fans. As for that million in popularity, Homelander didn't hesitate at all and used it all to strengthen his super durability. His popularity points instantly dropped to just a fraction. A surge of power gushed out from the depths of his body. It was neither hot nor painful, and the whole process lasted about 5 or 6 seconds before quietly receding like a receding tide. Lee Zuguo hadn't even started to enjoy it before it ended. However, the improvement was significant. The original Lee Zuguo's super durability still had weaknesses. Queen Maeve had caused damage to Lee Zuguo's ears with just a sharp sword and strength. But now, Lee Zuguo could let her attack. Even vulnerable parts like his ears, or even rinsing his mouth with an AK, would be effortless. This was true, all-encompassing super durability. 5th Avenue, Manhattan. 3 black SUVs blocked the middle of the road, trapping an armored truck from Wells Fargo dead in its tracks. Hurry! Hurry the fool up! The man wearing a Joker mask swung an iron hammer at the back door of the armored truck. On the 3rd strike, the lock deformed. On the 5th, the entire door was ripped open. The 2 guards inside the truck were curled up in the corner, their guns having already been confiscated by a second robber through the window. New Yorkers were well-traveled and experienced, but robbing an armored truck on 5th Avenue in broad daylight was a first. The robber had already pried open the cash safe. Bundles of $100 bills were stacked neatly. Just as he reached out to take the first stack. "I suggest you put the box down." The voice came from directly above, and everyone looked up at the same time. A person was hovering in the air, about 15 meters off the ground. His red and blue uniform remained motionless in the airflow, and the stars and stripes cape spread out behind him. He stood with his arms crossed over his chest, his posture relaxed. Lee Zuguo, or as the media more familiarly called him, Lee Zuguo. The robber who was directing traffic with an Arkansas 15 reacted the fastest, raising his muzzle and pulling the trigger. 7 consecutive shots. Lee Zuguo ignored the bullets. 2 beams of red light shot from his eyes, instantly melting the barrel of the AR-15. A second heat vision followed, sweeping across the belt buckles of the 3 robbers. 3 belts snapped at once, and 3 pairs of pants slid down simultaneously. After a brief silence, the onlookers on 5th Avenue burst into laughter. The robbers turned pale and pulled up their pants, crouching on the ground, not daring to move. The one directing traffic had it even worse. He was wearing boxer shorts with minions printed on them. NYPD sirens approached from afar. But the first to arrive at the scene was not a police car. A van with the Vought logo screeched to a halt at the intersection. The door slid open, a female reporter jumped out, followed by a burly man carrying a camera. Lee Zuguo was about to leave, but seeing this, he slowly descended. "Homelander. Homelander." The reporter trotted over, excitedly saying, "Can you give us a few minutes? All of North America is watching." Lee Zuguo turned, faced the camera, and flashed a standard smile revealing 8 teeth. "Of course, sweetheart. Serving the people is my greatest joy." The female reporter smiled and handed over the microphone. "Can you describe the situation just now?" Lee Zuguo tilted his head, making a thoughtful expression. He had practiced the duration of this pause, 1.5 seconds, not too long, not too short, enough to make the audience think he was seriously recalling, without appearing dull. "All right, sweetheart, it's quite simple. I was, patrolling." He wasn't patrolling, he was eating lasagna on the roof of an Italian restaurant on 7th Avenue, but that wasn't important. Then I heard the gunshots. "You know my ears." Lee Zuguo pointed to his ears, "They work better than your satellites." So I flew over to take a look, and 3 gentlemen were attempting an early withdrawal. The surrounding crowd roared with laughter. The female reporter followed up. We noticed you used your eyes to cut the robbers' belts. Is this some kind of new enforcement strategy? Lee Zuguo lowered his head and chuckled, his shoulders shaking slightly. He had also practiced the amplitude of this laugh. Look, I could have thrown them into the Hudson River, or I could have smashed them into the asphalt, but it's such a beautiful day, and there are so many tourists on Fifth Avenue. I think making everyone laugh is much better than giving everyone nightmares. Besides, you have to admit, minion underwear is quite cute. Laughter erupted from the cameraman behind the lens and the onlookers. Lee Zuguo wanted to say something else, but Raven's voice came through the small earpiece in his cochlea. A lizard monster had appeared at Midtown High School in Queens. This was good news, and also a hot topic. So Lee Zuguo immediately adjusted his plan. Alright, the interview is over. I seem to have heard someone calling for help at Midtown High School in Queens again. See you next time, everyone. After finishing his sentence, Lee Zuguo struck that iconic pose and shot into the sky, rushing to Queens at full speed. That cute lizard monster was his. New York, Queens. Midtown School of Science and Technology restroom. A creature over 2 meters tall, covered in deep green scales with a darker ridge along its back and horizontal stripes on its belly, its snout protruding and filled with sharp teeth, the lizard burst directly out of the restroom. It felt an endless surge of power welling up inside its body, with nowhere to release it. At the same time, accompanied by chaotic memories in its mind, bot, research, compound V, the unauthorized fusion of lizard genes. But its sanity was gradually being swallowed by this power, and it was drawn to the fleeing humans. The faucet in the restroom was still running. Peter Parker was crouching in the innermost stall, changing his suit, but the next second, the door of the adjacent stall flew off its hinges. The entire door panel was ripped off from the inside and slammed into the tiled wall opposite, breaking 2 tiles. Before the dust even settled, that thing was already standing in the middle of the restroom, head lowered, nostrils flaring as it sniffed for something. The men's restroom was very small. 2 rows of stalls, 4 sinks, and a mirror. Peter saw himself in the shattered mirror, his mask pulled only halfway up, his chin still exposed. He yanked it all the way down. Hey! The lizard turned its head, its slit pupils locking onto him. Peter sprang directly out of the stall, stepped onto the edge of the sink, vaulted over the lizard's head, and shot a web from his right hand, plastering it over those slit pupils. The lizard raised a claw to rip it off. Peter landed on its back and slammed his left fist into the scales on its lower back. The lizard angrily tore the webbing from its face, its 2-meter-long body turning within the 4-meter-wide restroom. Its tail whipped across, smashing an entire row of sinks. Porcelain shards flew, pipes burst, and jets of water sprayed up to the ceiling. Peter dodged by pressing against the ceiling, but the lizard's claws followed, 5 hooked talons piercing the ceiling just 10 centimeters from his head, ripping out a chunk of plasterboard and steel rebar. Peter let go, landed, rolled backward twice, and his back hit the restroom door, sending the door panel swinging outward. He scrambled into the hallway. There were people in the hallway, 3 boys standing by the water cooler, holding soda cans. They watched as a person in a red and blue spandex suit rolled out of the men's restroom, followed by a 2-meter-tall green lizard. The soda cans dropped. What the fool? Run! There was no need to shout a second time, the 3 of them turned and bolted. The lizard smashed through a section of the wall on the side, leaving bricks and dust scattered everywhere. The hallway was longer than the restroom. Peter shot a web onto the ceiling's fire pipe and swung over its head. The lizard jumped up, its claws grazing his lower leg. The outer layer of his suit was torn, though his skin wasn't hurt, but the force knocked his trajectory off course. He crashed into the emergency exit at the end of the hallway. Peter tumbled outside along with the door. A flash of confusion crossed his mind. Why had his spider sense failed? Or was it that the monster's speed had suddenly increased? On campus, the lizard followed, crawling out through the hole in the emergency door. It stood on the steps, facing the direction of the playground, feeling a surge of irritation in its heart. The next second, these thoughts were swallowed by rage. The lizard let out a long roar toward the sky. The sound waves bounced back from the school building's corridor, and everyone on the playground froze. 1 second of absolute silence, then screams erupted from all directions. Hundreds of students began to scatter and flee. The lizard jumped down from the steps, landing on the rubber track and creating two craters, then charged straight toward the densest part of the crowd. Peter attached a web to a flagpole and swept across half the playground. He landed behind the lizard, wrapping two webs from behind around its neck, crossing them over its chest. He pulled. The webbing went taut, his feet sliding across the rubber track, leaving two white marks as he was dragged forward by the manic lizard. The lizard didn't even turn its head. Peter cut the web, shot a new one onto the canopy of the stands, swung around from the side, and landed directly in front of the lizard. Hey, look at me, your opponent is me. The lizard lowered its head, shoulders leaning forward, and charged straight at him. Peter dodged to the side, but its shoulder grazed his chest. The impact carried him 3 meters away, his heels carving a white line into the track as he barely managed to steady himself. The lizard didn't stop after hitting him, it charged toward the stands, where there were people underneath. Students who couldn't escape scrambled between the metal supports under the stands, crouching in the shadows. Peter's gaze swept across. On the left side of the stands, behind the third row of supports, a shock of bright red hair made him recognize her instantly. Mary Jane, no. This was the first time Peter Parker felt anger. And on the right side of the stands, in the innermost position, there were several other girls crouching in the triangular space formed by the supports and the ground. The lizard was still charging. Peter shot two webs, one attaching to the lizard's left leg, the other wrapping around its right ankle. He pulled simultaneously, throwing his entire weight into it, his heels anchoring into cracks in the track. The lizard stumbled. It looked down at the webbing on its feet, raised its leg, and gave a yank. Peter was flung off the ground, spun half a circle in the air, and slammed his back against the metal beam of the stands. The lizard slammed into the main support in the center of the stands, the sound of twisting metal echoing across the entire playground. The stands began to shake, the supports on the left started to buckle, and it was on the verge of collapsing at any moment. At the edge of the playground, a bunch of news vans had pulled up at some point. A row of telephoto lenses stood outside the fence. A helicopter was circling above the campus. The aerial footage was cutting into live broadcast channels. Bot's logo, Fox's logo, CNN's logo. A student wearing a baseball cap was hiding behind the school building, recording a video. The video feed was shaking violently. Spider-Man was lying on the ground, and that green monster was walking toward the stands. Debris from the metal and concrete canopy was falling, and several girls were trapped underneath. The lizard stood upright in front of the stands, its massive shadow blocking out the afternoon sun. Whoa there, little guy, calm down. Bullying students isn't exactly a skill. A figure slowly descended from the sky. He wore a deep blue spandex suit covered in stars and stripes patterns, golden shoulder pads and a belt adding a sense of solemnity, and a cape with the stars and stripes rippling behind him despite the lack of wind. The photographers outside the playground all turned their lenses. The helicopter lowered by 20 meters. This scene made the students who had been fleeing stop in their tracks. God, is that Superman? No, that's Homelander. John, do you never watch the news? Did you see that? He just flew down. I don't care who he is, just take that monster down. Some bold students even took out their phones to start filming and recording. And the few girls trapped under the stands wore expressions of survivors who had just cheated death. Peter Parker also breathed a sigh of relief. It should be fine now. Anyone who pays attention to the news now knows this superhero, the friendly neighbor Lee Zuguo. Even if it's just a kitten, he will step in to help. The current situation was exactly the result Lee Zuguo wanted, although there was a slight mishap. The temporary compound versus had indeed leaked from his hands. But he had wanted to find someone to research whether this stuff could be mass-produced. He hadn't expected it to fall into Connor's hands, and the guy was crazy enough to fuse the two directly. No wonder Spider-Man couldn't handle it. But even after turning into the lizard and drinking the temporary compound V, in front of him, it counted as nothing more than an elite mob. He landed slowly and looked at the lizard. All right, little green monster, that's enough. At the very first word from Lee Zuguo, the enraged lizard charged straight at him. Lee Zuguo's expression didn't change, but the moment the lizard approached, he threw a punch. No one saw how fast he struck, but the lizard flew backward at several times the speed he came, slammed into the ground, rolled a few times, and passed out, motionless. Simple and violent, one punch. Fans plus 235 plus 358. Popularity plus 357 plus 486. The entire Midtown High School erupted instantly, filled with cheers. Reporters who had arrived at some unknown time outside the fence scrambled for positions, their telephoto lenses pressed against the wire mesh, glass clinking against the metal with a clattering sound. The rotor sounds of 3 helicopters pressed down from above. Lee Zuguo's boots landed lightly on the rubber track. The moment he landed, he slightly adjusted his posture to face VOT International's main camera, his smile deepening by a fraction of a millimeter. He walked toward the collapsed bleachers, bent down, and used one hand to pry apart the steel pipe pinning the blonde girl's knee. The pipe bent into a strange angle in his hand before being casually tossed aside. The girl was helped out, but her knee was bleeding, and her school uniform skirt was covered in dust. She looked up, a strand of golden hair falling and hanging by the side of her face. Lee Zuguo saw her appearance, his smile unchanged. This was the bare minimum, and the other girls were rescued one by one. Gwen Stacy's lips moved, her face filled with gratitude. Thank you, Mr. Lee Zuguo. If it weren't for you just now, my friend and I really wouldn't have known what to do. In her excitement, Gwen burst into tears, leaning into Homelander's chest. There was no other reason than having just escaped the hands of the god of death. She was still just a high school student who had just experienced a life or death situation. Seeking comfort in such a situation was perfectly normal, but Lee Zuguo only offered verbal comfort, his hands remaining in a safe place while comforting her. He needed popularity right now, not female beauty. It's all right, my dear. Everything has been perfectly resolved, and you did very well. The people around them were exceptionally envious of the girl in Homelander's arms this time. Who is this girl? I'm jealous. I bet this fool is definitely fooling it. Look, her hand is resting right on his pectoral muscle. I'm really curious how hard Homelander's pectoral muscles actually are. I'm more curious why his butt is even perkier than Captain America's. It's too perfect. What about Spider-Man? Mary Jane was being helped by another girl, coming around from the other side of the bleachers. Her calf was scraped, and she was limping. Superhero popularity plus 10,000 from Spider-Man. Seeing Lee Zuguo and Gwen Stacy in his arms, she paused for a moment, then trotted over. Sir. Lee Zuguo turned his head. This angle was for the cameras. Just call me Lee Zuguo, or Superman works too, since they always get us mixed up anyway. There was a burst of laughter from outside the fence. The reporters went crazy, all wanting to get the exclusive scoop. Homelander. How did you discover the attack here? Homelander. Are you and Spider-Man in a cooperative relationship? Does VOT International have a statement tonight? Homelander stood in the center of the track, the sobbing in his arms gradually subsiding. Mary Jane stood to his left, and Gwen stood to his right, 2 high school girls, 1 blonde, 1 redhead, in school uniforms. The composition was perfect. 2 VOT International cameras had already been pulled out of the van, positioned even further ahead than Fox. Ask one by one. Lee Zuguo raised his hand and pressed down. First, I was just passing by. Someone told me the fried chicken shop here in Queens had a half-price sale today, so I flew over to buy 2 orders. Someone in the crowd laughed out loud. Lee Zuguo tilted his head. Then I heard screaming, and just happened to see a big guy doing some demolition work, so I came over. Before the interview was over, the sound of engines came from the distance. Military Humvees rushed in through the school gate, followed by armored vehicles. People in camouflage jumped out, guns raised, spreading out to surround the unconscious, the lizard in a semicircle. The colonel leading the team trotted over. Mr. Homelander. Colonel. We are taking custody of this monster. Be my guest. Homelander stepped back, giving up his position with a wide, dramatic motion, ensuring all the cameras captured him, cooperating with the military and respecting procedure. The colonel gestured toward the lizard. Several soldiers advanced with guns raised, while 2 others carried a specialized alloy restraint device. The lizard lay prone in the sand pit, its ribs rising and falling, the scales on its right forearm completely shattered, revealing the dark red muscle underneath. Would Lee Zuguo be so kind as to let others swoop in and take the credit? Of course not, so he prepared to leave, but Gwen wiped away her tears and blocked Lee Zuguo's path. Mr. Lee Zuguo, I haven't thanked you yet. You saved my life and my friends. Lee Zuguo raised his hand to gently wipe away the last tear from the corner of Gwen's eye, and he said righteously. My dear, I am Lee Zuguo. You don't need to thank me, what you should really thank is your own bravery. I saw it very clearly from the sky, you were the bravest one. Homelander wasn't lying. Among the several girls and men, Gwen had performed the best. Gwen was a bit shy from the praise because she didn't feel she had done that well. At most, her screaming was a bit quieter, but perhaps she really was the one who performed best. After all, Lee Zuguo wouldn't lie to her. Seeing this scene, Mary Jane didn't know why, but her heart felt a bit sour. Homelander was handsome, powerful, and gentle to an excessive degree. The lights from the media, photographers, and reporters were all aimed at the two of them. No one else was getting any camera time. Mary Jane was a normal girl. She had vanity, and feeling envious, jealous, or even wanting to take her place was perfectly normal. Alright everyone, if you are also my fans, and you encounter a big guy, you can go to the VOT International official website and call the Homelander hotline. I will arrive as fast as I can. Homelander bid farewell to everyone, not forgetting to put in a plug while he was at it. The reporters swarmed forward. Lee Zuguo. Say a few more words. The new contract you signed with VOT International. Facing the reporters' questions, Homelander only answered one question arranged by the VOT International reporter, then, under the gaze of everyone, shot into the sky, making $1 million departure. At this moment, the military had become the new hot topic for the reporters. This colonel was specifically sent by the military to intercept the situation, but he hadn't expected Homelander to hand over his trophy so readily. This made him smell a hint of danger. Following Homelander's departure and the soldiers' approach, that lizard monster, which had been lying there looking half dead and even exposing raw flesh, suddenly opened its eyes, revealing vertical pupils. The lizard's tail whipped up, knocking over two soldiers. Its body vaulted into the air, all four limbs pushing off the ground at once, and it darted toward the school gate. Gunfire rang out in a chorus. Bullets struck its back, sparks flying everywhere, but the scales didn't break. It had already vaulted over the fence. The reporters screamed and scattered. And this scene was captured perfectly by the people from VOT International. Queens. In a certain alley, Peter dragged his injured body to a spot. His injuries were not too severe and were healing quickly. The lizard today was ridiculously strong. If it weren't for Homelander, Mary Jane might have. Peter Parker felt grateful while also harboring a hint of envy that the other person could stand openly in the spotlight, accepting people's cheers and gratitude. However, this did not mean he wanted to expose his identity and become a hero standing in the spotlight. Everyone has their own choices, and Peter Parker chose to hide, moving away from reporters and leaving alone. Just as Peter was preparing to shoot a web to leave, Lee Zuguo slowly descended from the sky and greeted him. Nice to see you again, Spider-Man, or perhaps I should say, Spider-Man. Lee Zuguo came here to recruit Peter to join the Seven. After all, Spider-Man never lacked popularity, they were not on the same track, and he also appreciated the other's character and philosophy. Lee Zuguo was not a good person, but that did not hinder him from hoping his team members were good people. Peter felt a bit like a fan meeting an idol when facing Homelander, and his voice was unconsciously reserved. Mr. Homelander, do you need something from me? Homelander landed and took a step forward. The alley was narrow, and the distance between the two instantly shrank to less than 2 meters. Of course I have business. I wouldn't just find a kid licking his wounds in an alley to chat. Peter's back pressed against the brick wall behind him. Lee Zuguo retreated to a safe distance. I want to invite you to join VOT International, and the Seven that I am currently assembling. Peter obviously didn't know what the Seven was, nor had he heard of VOT International. What is that? In Lee Zuguo's view, this was VOT International's dereliction of duty. A company, a team of heroes. Peter swallowed. I can't reveal my identity. Who said you had to reveal it? Lee Zuguo crossed his arms over his chest. That posture was the classic pose on the GG billboard, but in this 2-meter wide smelly alley, with less than an arm's length, the sense of oppression was completely different. You can keep wearing the mask, your identity can remain confidential, and VOT International will even provide you with equipment upgrades, medical support, legal protection, plus a fixed monthly subsidy. The figure won't be low. Peter wasn't tempted, but upon hearing there was a subsidy and it was likely a high amount, he was genuinely moved for a moment. Lee Zuguo continued. You almost died at the hands of that lizard today. You are carrying the entire public security of Queens by yourself, with no backup, no resources, and when injured, you can only hide next to a trash can waiting to recover. Peter said stubbornly. I can handle it. I saw it. Lying on the ground, handling it very well. Peter closed his mouth. Lee Zuguo said sincerely. You are a true hero. Not for money, not for fame, and you still charge forward after getting beaten. There aren't many people like that these days. Peter lowered his head and said, a hero should help others. I am not one. I couldn't even handle that lizard. Lee Zuguo stepped forward and patted Peter on the shoulder, saying earnestly, Kid, you don't have to blame yourself. This isn't your fault, because with great power comes great responsibility. You have no obligation to face an enemy you cannot defeat. Peter's body stiffened for a moment. Uncle Ben had also said this, and now he heard it again from Homelander. Superhero popularity plus 10000 from Spider-Man. Homelander's eyes brightened slightly, and seeing this, he increased his efforts. That's why I came to find you. You have the ability, and you are willing to take responsibility, but you shouldn't carry it alone. Peter spoke, his voice slightly choked. Mr. Homelander, I am very grateful that you saved those students today, and I am also very grateful that you gave me this opportunity, but I have to refuse. Lee Zuguo acted as a listener. Peter said, I have my own way. Maybe it's not the best, maybe the efficiency is very low, and I might get pinned to the ground again next time, but this is the way I chose. Lee Zuguo did not force it. He turned around, his cape flying up the moment he turned. I understand, but the offer is not withdrawn. Whenever you change your mind, you can come directly to Vought Tower to find me. The door is always open for you. There are more people who need me, I can't waste too much time here. Goodbye, Spider-Man. Superhero popularity plus 2000 from Spider-Man. Lee Zuguo's feet left the ground, and his whole body rose vertically, so fast that 1 second he was standing in the alley, and the next second he was flying away in the high sky with a sonic boom. Peter leaned against the wall, watching the place where Homelander left, and said in a voice only he could hear. Goodbye, Mr. Homelander. Sorry for wasting your time. Peter's bit of envy disappeared, leaving only gratitude. He wanted to be a hero like Homelander, but under the name of Spider-Man, not Peter. He also liked the job of a reporter, or rather, a part-time reporter. He was more convinced of the words from Uncle Ben and Homelander. With great power comes great responsibility. At the end of the alley, a stray cat darted out from behind a trash can and disappeared at the corner of the street. Police sirens could be heard in the distance. The night in Queens went on as usual. Vought International. The first thing Lee Zuguo did upon returning was not to find anyone, but to open the panel. Character: Lee Zuguo. Title: Lee Zuguo. Abilities: Super Strength, Super Flight, Heat Vision, Super Hearing, X-ray Vision, Super Durability, Super Intelligence. Effect only covers himself. Popularity: 103,686. Superhero popularity: 55,000. Fans: 698,989. Popularity rank: Blue Star North America household name. Popularity and fans were still rising, but that wasn't the point. The point was that the system had unlocked new uses for popularity and superhero points. Popularity has reached the North American household name level and has begun to spread outward. Super popularity mode has been unlocked. Popularity mode. Consuming 10,000 popularity per second can unlock super popularity mode, which can be stacked and consumed. Super popularity mode. Consumes 10,000 popularity per second, strength increases tenfold. Superhero prize pool updated, added store to purchase the Boys Universe items separately. Lee Zuguo couldn't help but click his tongue when he saw the popularity mode. 10,000 popularity per second. 1 million popularity was only enough for a little over a minute, but it could instantly raise his strength tenfold, and it could be continuously stacked. It was like consuming 100,000 popularity per second stacked. Hulk would also be a roadside ant to Lee Zuguo. A bit like a Saiyan. This mode was terrifying and could turn defeat into victory at critical moments, but the popularity consumed was also massive. As for the items from the Boys Universe, he also took a look. The one that made him the most jealous was the first generation Compound V. This thing could not only solve his aging problem but also comprehensively strengthen all his abilities. This could be seen from the last season of The Boys, when Lee Zuguo injected V1 and blasted the sky with brutal lasers. But this thing required a terrifying amount of superhero points. It required a full 100,000 superhero points. If it weren't for Peter providing him with tens of thousands, Lee Zuguo wouldn't have even gathered half of it by now. The bonds and favorability of superheroes were far more difficult than imagined. Peter's 22,000 was entirely due to his sweetheart Mary Jane, plus Lee Zugwo's words touching his soul and the memory kill of Uncle Ben. Otherwise, having a few thousand would have been good enough. Thinking of this, Lee Zugwo was in a good mood and shouted outside in the office. "Beautiful lady, please bring me a glass of milk." A new day. The front page of the New York Times featured a half-page photo. Peter Parker stood in front of a newsstand at a Queens subway station. He picked up the newspaper and flipped to the third page. Homelander was hovering above Midtown School of Science and Technology, arms crossed over his chest, his cape whipped into a flag by the air currents. In the bottom right corner of the photo, one could still see the lizard and the girls in precarious danger below the stands. The headline was just one line: he was there. "Hey, kid, you buying or not? If not, put it down." The newsstand owner poked half his head out of the window. Peter put the newspaper back and ultimately chose to buy a copy of the Daily Bugle. The front page headline was 3 font sizes larger than the New York Times. The moment Peter saw the front page, he felt like the world went dark. Spider-Man causes campus disaster. Why must superhero Homelander clean up after the masked criminal? The accompanying picture was a screenshot of him being pinned to the ground by the lizard. The caption read, "Spider-Man was easily subdued in battle. If not for Homelander's timely intervention, more than 200 teachers and students at Midtown School of Science and Technology would have faced life-threatening danger." Peter folded the newspaper and stuffed it into his backpack. He really hated Jameson right now, even though the man was his boss. It wasn't the first or second day he'd been criticized, but today's piece was different. Today's piece dragged Homelander into the mess as well. Peter walked into the subway station, swiped his card, and stood at the edge of the platform. On the billboard opposite was a bought promotional photo of Homelander, his smile standard, teeth neat, with a line of text below, "Protecting the United States, starting every day." When was this ad from? Peter hadn't paid much attention to these before, but now he realized that at some point, Homelander's presence seemed to be everywhere in his life. Queens Midtown School of Science and Technology. Peter arrived at the classroom as usual, and the whole class was discussing Homelander. Someone next to him was looking at their phone, the screen showing a live CNN broadcast. Peter turned his head, his peripheral vision catching the scrolling subtitles. Break-in: the Department of Defense announces the launch of Operation Lizard Hunt, promising to capture the mutant creature within 30 days. The Pentagon will utilize previously undisclosed special weapons. Noon cafeteria. Peter listened to the people in the cafeteria discussing Homelander, but not a single one was discussing Spider-Man. Even though he didn't want to admit it, he felt a bit down. Harry Osborn, having gotten his food, sat down right next to Peter Parker, his expression unable to hide his excitement. "Hey Peter, where did you go yesterday? Did you see Homelander? He was so cool. It's a pity I didn't see it live." Peter didn't understand what he meant. "What do you mean, Harry? Didn't see it live?" Harry took out his phone and played a video. "Peter, you don't know. Look at this video. It's going viral on Twitter, YouTube, and all the major websites." A recording of Homelander's battle from late last night has surfaced, over 4 minutes long. The recording shows Homelander subduing the mutant creature, the lizard, within 30 seconds of arriving at the scene and knocking it down onto the school playground. However, the National Guard responsible for the follow-up encirclement failed to complete the containment within the effective timeframe, allowing the creature to escape through the underground drainage system. A Department of Defense spokesperson refused to comment on the matter, but an unnamed Pentagon official stated, "This was a serious tactical coordination error." The military was backed into a corner by the video. In the roughly 4-minute video, Homelander resolved the fight in 30 seconds. The remaining 3+ minutes were the National Guard running around on the playground, staring at each other in front of the empty sewer opening. This video has already been viewed over 20 million times on Twitter. The top comment in the section was one sentence: "We pay so many taxes every year to support the military, and the result is that they aren't even as good as someone in a spandex suit." The military had to do something. Halfway through watching, Peter's phone vibrated. It was a message from Mary Jane. "Did you see the news? That piece in the Daily Bugle?" Peter typed. "I saw it." Peter stared at the screen. MJ didn't know that Spider-Man was him. She was just standing up for Homelander. From her perspective, Homelander was the hero who descended from the sky yesterday, and Spider-Man was that masked person who almost killed all their classmates. Even though a week ago, MJ was still happy because Spider-Man had mentioned her name. Peter thought for a moment and replied. The Daily Bugle is always like this. Mary Jane replied instantly. I mean the military one, capturing the lizard in 30 days. Are they serious? That thing ran through the sewers. The entire New York underground drainage system is hundreds of kilometers long. How do they plan to find it? Peter didn't reply, because he was thinking about this question too. Seeing that Peter hadn't replied for a long time, Mary Jane simply brought a few of her girlfriends over and sat down. Hi Harry. Hi Peter, what are you thinking about? Harry smiled and greeted them, and Peter came back to his senses and shook his head. I was thinking about the parallel universe that Mr. Sam talked about in class today. Mary Jane shrugged, clearly uninterested in questions about the universe, and continued talking about Homelander. As one of the people saved yesterday, she had a lot to say. Harry was drawn into the topic, but as soon as he spoke, he made Mary Jane shut her mouth. Hey, MJ, I heard that the first person Homelander saved was a girl in school named Gwen Stacy, and there was an exclusive hug. Is that true? Mary Jane's expression looked a bit ugly. Coincidentally, Gwen Stacy happened to sit down not far away, surrounded by a circle of people, including even some teachers. Now, quite a few people in school had become loyal fans of Homelander, teachers included. As the first girl to be saved by Homelander and even given a one-sided hug, Gwen naturally received a lot of attention. But most of the questions were about what it felt like to cry against Homelander's chest muscles. Did you touch his abs? No. That's such a pity. Gwen blushed from these kinds of questions. The curiosity of her classmates and teachers was constantly reinforcing her memory of yesterday. There was even a brain-induced illusion. Did she really accidentally touch them? Meanwhile, inside Vought Tower, Lee Zuguo watched his skyrocketing popularity and fan count, as well as the military's so-called lizard hunt plan in the news, and almost laughed out loud. The appearance of the military undoubtedly provided a contrast for him, making this super rescue appear even more perfect. Natasha, you did very well. I'll double your bonus this quarter. The video going viral online was precisely Natasha's idea. She was worthy of her title as Black Widow, directly causing the military to break down and release a statement overnight. Raven envied Natasha for being able to receive Homelander's praise and rewards. She simply didn't understand these things. Natasha was wearing red-bottomed high heels, a sharply tailored black suit skirt wrapping around her waist, the curve of the pencil skirt hugging just right, and her red hair was casually tied behind her head. Thank you. It is my honor to serve you, sir. In just a few short weeks, Natasha had already become a capable assistant in the president's office. Her professional ability was extraordinarily strong. In comparison, Mystique Raven seemed a bit mediocre, but she was stronger than Black Widow in one aspect. That was loyalty plus shapeshifting. Lee Zuguo liked this rare quality and ability. Raven, what's the schedule for tonight? Raven handed him some milk and said. Sir, tonight is The Ellen Show, one of the highest-rated reality talk shows in the United States. Burbank Warner Brothers. Studio. The Ellen Show, also known as The Ellen Show. Outside the studio, a line of over 200 people had already formed, because today's guest list had been leaked in advance Homelander. Therefore, the audience for this episode was exceptionally large. Lee Zuguo stood in the backstage corridor, an earpiece plugged into his ear. The assistant director was reading through the schedule nearby, but he didn't hear a single word. His super hearing had already penetrated 3 soundproof walls. In the audience, 2 girls were whispering and shrieking, I swear, if he flies in, I'll faint on the spot. The other replied, did you watch the video of him saving people yesterday? That lizard monster was punched by him. Lee Zuguo had already taken off his earpiece. The assistant director was still reading. Ellen will first play a news clip from Midtown School of Science and Technology from yesterday, then introduce you. For your entrance, we suggest. Raven straightened the collar of Lee Zuguo's cape, and while doing so, she surreptitiously touched his pectoral muscles. They were even harder than the audience said. What Lee Zuguo needed to do today was deepen the impression he left. He wanted to be the only superhero you would want to fly into your living room. The music started. Ellen's opening monologue came through the wall panels. All right, I know you aren't here to see me today. Honestly, I'm a little hurt. I've been hosting for so long, and this is the first time I've felt like I'm just an opening act. Laughter erupted from the audience. But I understand you. After all, I watched that video yesterday too. After watching it, I sent a text to my wife and said, Honey, I think I need to change careers. Even louder laughter. Alright, no more nonsense. Ladies and gentlemen, Lee Zuguo. The moment Lee Zuguo walked out from behind the curtain, the decibel level in the entire studio doubled. He was wearing his iconic suit, his cape swaying slightly as he walked. His pace was neither fast nor slow, and every step fell perfectly in rhythm with the audience. Ellen walked over, clapping, her expression one of genuine astonishment. Alright, I take back what I said earlier. I'm not just an opening act, I'm just background scenery. Lee Zuguo smiled and reached out, saying, Ellen, thank you for the invitation. Ellen pointed to the sofa and said, please sit, please sit. You know, I had prepared a very grand introduction, but after you walked out, I felt any words would be superfluous. Lee Zuguo sat down in a relaxed posture, but his back was straight. He didn't cross his legs, occupying the space perfectly without being aggressive. Ellen turned to the camera and said, I'm sure many people already know about what happened at Midtown School of Science and Technology yesterday. Let's play a clip first. The big screen lit up. The footage, shot on a mobile phone, was shaking violently. High in the sky, Homelander descended. The lizard charged in anger, then suddenly flew backward at several times the speed, slamming into the ground and rolling a few times before, passing out, and lying still. No one even saw how he attacked. Low gasps of amazement came from the audience. Ellen turned to him. All right, first of all, what exactly is that thing? Lee Zuguo spoke eloquently according to the script. The military's preliminary investigation has only confirmed that it is some kind of genetic mutant. It's not extraterrestrial, it's homegrown on Earth. Homegrown on Earth. That's great. I thought we had already used up our quota for aliens. Ellen asked, continuing amidst the laughter of the entire studio. Those hundreds of students yesterday, if you hadn't appeared, they would probably already be. Lee Zuguo took over, his smile fading slightly, his expression becoming serious. There would have been casualties. That monster was very aggressive. When I arrived, a young man in a spider suit was already fighting it. Spider-Man. Yes, he was very brave, but the difference in size was too great. Superhero popularity plus 1000 from Spider-Man. Lee Zuguo paused for a moment. And there was another girl. Ellen raised an eyebrow. Oh. When I went in, the other two girls were already too scared to speak, but one girl was very brave. She was holding an iron rod, standing in front of the other two. A 16 or 17-year-old girl, facing a monster over 2 meters tall, standing there with an iron rod. The studio went quiet. Lee Zuguo continued to recount the situation at the time. I think this kind of courage doesn't come from superpowers, but is innate. At that moment, I just wanted to applaud that girl's courage. Applause broke out. This time it wasn't shrieking, it was the kind of respectful, uniform applause. Ellen asked curiously. Do you know what her name is? Gwen Stacy. Gwen Stacy, Ellen repeated, turning to the camera and smiling. Gwen, if you are watching this episode, Homelander says you are very brave, and the American audience thinks you are very brave too. The audience applauded. Outside the camera's view at this moment. The Ellen reality show shot directly to the top of US ratings, and not just because of the lizard and the officials' weaknesses yesterday. The bigger reason was that this was the first reality show to feature a superhero. In the past, they invited celebrity couples, superstars, singers, and even politicians, but this was the first time for a superhero. The audience was very intrigued. They wanted to see what the difference was between a superhero and an ordinary person. Shield. Nick Fury watched Homelander on the screen, his face darkening. In his anger, he slammed a hand onto the table. What exactly does this spandex-wearing freak want? A superhero participating in a reality show. Natasha, who was beside him, added. Homelander's tie-in comic is coming out in a few days too. Nick Fury's expression darkened even further, although others couldn't tell. How is your observation at VOT going? What kind of conspiracy is this Homelander plotting? Natasha was silent for a moment before saying. He is planning to film his own exclusive superhero movie and build a theme park, as well as how to become the most popular superhero in the United States, wanting to crush Captain America and Iron Man in terms of popularity. Nick Fury's single eye stared fixedly at Black Widow. Nothing else. Does loving to drink milk count? A look of disbelief appeared on Nick Fury's face. What? Although Natasha didn't want to admit it, it was indeed true. Just kidding. Although Homelander likes to put on a show, he is indeed fighting crime. Nick Fury pinpointed the issue. No, he is just a giant baby who lacks love and could turn against us at any moment. Natasha felt that lacking love wasn't really a flaw, but Nick Fury was already extremely angry, so she chose to keep quiet. In front of the television, Gwen's phone was exploding with calls and messages. Just because on the highest rated reality show in the United States, Homelander had praised her as a brave girl again. That chubby guy Ellen actually asked if she was there in front of the entire American audience. Oh my god. Looking at the handsome man talking eloquently on the television, she felt her heart beating exceptionally fast. Queens Forest Hills apartment. Peter watched the reality show and silently sent a message to Mary Jane. MJ, did you watch the Ellen reality show? Homelander mentioned Spider-Man. Of course, Mary Jane saw it, but she felt that all this praise should have belonged to her. She should have been the girl mentioned by Homelander and remembered by the American audience. Gwen Stacy just happened to throw herself into Homelander's arms a step earlier. As for Peter's message, Mary Jane glanced at it and didn't even have the desire to reply. Compared to Homelander, Spider-Man was just a masked messenger of justice. The reality show on TV was still continuing. The number of people watching was also more and more unusual than imagined. Alan. The director's voice came through Alan's earpiece. He pressed his hand to his ear, his expression changing to show the excitement of, I just received a bombshell piece of news. Alan turned to the audience and said with surprise. I've just been informed that we have another guest today, an uninvited guest. The audience began to stir upon hearing this. Lee Zuguo was a bit curious about who exactly that uninvited guest could be. The door to the backstage passage opened. An arrogant man wearing sunglasses walked out, dressed in a dark gray three-piece suit with his tie loosened halfway, holding a cup of coffee in his hand. Playboy, billionaire, genius scientist, former Middle East arms dealer, and superhero Iron Man. The audience erupted again. This wasn't much of a surprise to Lee Zuguo. Tony walked over, waved the coffee cup in his hand at the audience, and then flopped onto the sofa next to Lee Zuguo. Sorry I'm late, traffic was backed up. Alan, you flew in from New York. Yeah, the air was backed up too. You know, there are more and more people flying in the sky these days. Tony said, turning his head to glance at Lee Zuguo. Hi, Star-Spangled Boy. Hi, Stark, Lee Zuguo replied. Tony sank into the sofa, his posture excessively relaxed. How's this for a surprise? Lee Zuguo made an exaggerated face-palming gesture. It's absolutely terrible. Alan seized the opportunity. So, to both superheroes, everyone has always been curious about your relationship, or you, friends, colleagues, or rivals. Tony took a sip of coffee. We're practitioners in the same industry, only he's the rookie, and I'm the veteran. Lee Zuguo certainly wouldn't admit that. Tony, how long have you been Iron Man? 3 months. Tony smiled nonchalantly. If you count the technical accumulation, 20 years. 20 years, but in the few months since I appeared, the crime rate in New York has dropped by 50%, and across the US it's dropped by 20%. Tony really had nothing to say to that, because if you really talk about his identity as an arms dealer, the rise in crime rates might even be related to him. Alan slapped the table. All right, I think I need some popcorn. Tony put down his coffee cup and turned his body toward Lee Zuguo. Seriously, about that lizard incident yesterday, well done. The precision and force control were very good, and there was no collateral damage. For someone without an AI-assisted targeting system, that's quite rare. The audience laughed. Lee Zuguo replied with a bit of helplessness. There were fans of mine at the school, and I heard their cries for help. Everyone knows. The rhythm of this conversation was hijacked by Tony, which wasn't a bad thing. The stronger the chemistry between the two, the longer the screen time, and the greater the reach. But one detail was stuck in his mind. Tony Stark had come uninvited. A genius with an extreme desire for control wouldn't appear on someone else's show for no reason. He didn't come here just to steal the spotlight. Alan was asking Tony about his new armor. Tony was answering in his usual way, 30% truth and 70% jokes, with very low information content but extremely high entertainment value. Alan raised his hand. One last question. Chosen by audience vote. If the two of you were to fight, who would win? The audience went wild. Tony didn't hesitate. He would win. On a physical level, I have zero chance of winning. He could crush my armor like a soda can. The audience went quiet for a moment, not expecting this answer. However, Tony raised his coffee cup to the camera. I always have a backup plan, and that goes from a backup plan to an ultimate contingency. Lee Zuguo didn't expect the arrogant man to boost him at the end. Was he asking for something from him? Alan stood up. Alright. Today's show. After the show, backstage. Tony raised his glass to signal him. Mr. Star Spangled Boy, I'd like to take you out to dinner next Tuesday. I have some things I'd like to discuss with you in person. Lee Zuguo readily agreed, because when Tony finally admitted he couldn't win, both his fan count and popularity value saw a proportional surge. Iron Man had a massive fan base, and they were very combative on social media sites like Facebook. There had always been debates over which of the two superheroes was stronger. Now that their idol had taken the lead and admitted defeat, no matter how stubborn the fans were, they would be crushed by Homelander's fans. His popularity naturally skyrocketed. A few days later, as the broadcast of the Alan Show fermented, because Homelander and Iron Man appearing on the same stage again caused a huge uproar, the most furious person was none other than Nick Fury. After all, Tony Stark was one of the candidates for his Avengers initiative, yet now he was hanging out with Homelander. Of course, Nick Fury would never admit that his hatred for Homelander stemmed from his rejection. Nick Fury had issued invitations on behalf of S.H.I.E.L.D. more than once, but they had all been rejected for various reasons. The only time they had a conversation, Homelander flew off halfway through to film a commercial. Putting aside his suspicious identity, there was even a slight possibility that Nick Fury had turned from love to hate. Next were the mutants across the country who saw the news. Many mutants believed that Homelander was one of their own, and that he was just lucky enough to have mutant abilities similar to Superman, which was why he was so popular. Some even felt, I could do that too, and asked, why is he the one who gets recognized and liked by the public? But the reality was that the day after a mutant popped up, they would receive an anonymous report and be dragged back by the military, Hydra, or some other faction to be dissected and studied. Smart mutants, such as the three major mutant factions: the Hellfire Club, the Brotherhood, and the Mutant Academy. They were all secretly sending people to make contact, with roughly the same goal. To use Lee Zuguo to rehabilitate mutants' image, or to hope that he would join their own faction. It was just a pity that most mutants had features that were too obvious. Currently, only Mystique had successfully approached him. But what gave Professor Charles a headache was that Mystique seemed to have her own ideas. She had even started refusing to communicate with him. This was not good news. A new week. Taking advantage of the momentum from the Alan Show, Bot International officially launched the self-titled Homelander comic. Homelander. Origins. It mainly told the story of Homelander being captured by aliens as a child and subjected to various experiments, only to return as an adult with a heart for justice to save the Earth. The main selling point was a mix of individual heroism and a beautiful, strong, and tragic character design. Furthermore, the comic subtly mentioned the concept of the Seven for the first time, which received widespread approval from most of the audience. That day, 300,000 copies of the comic were snatched up in less than 3 minutes of release. It is worth mentioning, Tony personally sponsored 10,000 copies for his own collection, and also sent them out as employee benefits for Stark Industries. Efforts have their rewards. That Tuesday, Lee Zuguo brought Natasha along and arrived on time for the party Tony was hosting at his company. Stark Tower. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows was the night view of Manhattan. Inside, over 100 people were holding an evening party. The lighting was warm, a jazz band played in the corner, and the crowd was scattered throughout the room, consisting of politicians, arms dealers, tech upstarts, and Hollywood producers. The crisp clinking of champagne glasses, the rhythm of high heels clicking on the marble floor. Some were chatting about stocks, others about the latest season of reality shows. Tony Stark stood on the stage, holding a glass of whiskey in one hand and a microphone in the other as he spoke. Ladies and gentlemen, Tony's amplifier drowned out the background music on the entire floor, drawing everyone's attention. I said there would be a special guest tonight. Some of you didn't believe me, thinking I was just bragging. Tony spread his hands and said, "When have I ever bragged? Let us welcome my friend, Lee Zuguo." The elevator doors opened right on time. Lee Zuguo was wearing that uniform. He raised his right hand and waved to the crowd with a smile. The whole room erupted in cheers instantly. Some people whistled, some raised their glasses above their heads, and some even took out their phones to start filming. In the corner, a woman in a sequined dress shrieked, and her male companion quickly grabbed her. He walked through the crowd. When someone reached out, he shook their hand. When someone raised a glass, he clinked it. When someone called his name, he turned his head and gave a perfectly timed nod. From the elevator to the bar, in 30 seconds, Lee Zuguo made everyone in the room feel like they had been noticed. Tony had already tossed the microphone to a staff member nearby and walked up to him. His first sentence was not a greeting. Are you serious, sweetheart? You wear this thing everywhere. I'm hosting a cocktail party, not a Halloween bash. Homelander took the champagne handed to him by a waiter but didn't drink it. People expect Lee Zuguo. Tony leaned against the bar, raising his glass with a relaxed posture. You're even more conceited than I am. Oh, right, I heard from the people downstairs that you brought someone with you. Lee Zuguo turned his head. Natasha Romanoff walked over from the crowd, wearing a long black dress with a slit up to the mid-thigh, her red hair pinned up, revealing her entire neckline. She was also holding a glass of champagne, but there were no lipstick marks on the rim, she hadn't taken a sip. Natasha walked over and stood beside Lee Zuguo. Tony looked her up and down and let out a whistle. All right, is this your secret girlfriend? Personal assistant, Lee Zuguo corrected. Personal assistant. Tony repeated, his pronunciation making the phrase sound like it meant something else entirely. You know, I was originally going to help introduce you to a few models, actresses, or former gymnasts, but it seems completely unnecessary now. He raised his glass to Natasha. Stark Industries welcomes you to jump ship. Double the salary, no overtime, and the boss is better looking than him. Natasha glanced at him. Mr. Stark, I am responsible for Mr. Lee Zuguo's entire schedule, including screening out parties that aren't worth his time. Tonight almost didn't pass the screening. Tony raised an eyebrow and looked at Lee Zuguo, as if to confirm, is this really just a secretary? Natasha continued her verbal assault. At the very least, my current boss doesn't make me remember his ex-girlfriend's birthdays. 3 or 4 guests who were eavesdropping nearby turned their heads away simultaneously, pretending to look at the holographic projection on the ceiling. Tony was rendered speechless and could only look at Lee Zuguo and say, your secretary is even more ruthless than Pepper. As her boss, aren't you going to do something about her? Lee Zuguo replied seriously, the United States promotes freedom. Upon hearing this, Tony rolled his eyes, took another sip of whiskey, and set the glass down. Fine, small talk over. Follow me, there's a quiet place upstairs. Lee Zuguo set down the untouched champagne glass. Before turning away, he scanned the hall. Phones were still recording, so he gave one final smile. Natasha followed behind him, keeping exactly 1 step of distance. The upper hall. Tony turned around, the expression on his face changed. It was no longer the playboy persona from the party. Come in, let's talk about something serious. Pepper was there too. Tony briefly introduced the 3 of them, and then Pepper took Natasha aside to discuss serious matters. The 2 walked to the window. Tony got straight to the point. I've run into a bit of trouble. I'm planning to restart the Stark Expo, but the government doesn't agree. They even consider the Iron Man suit a high-risk weapon, want me to hand it over to the state, and are even planning to hold a hearing. Lee Zuguo asked, so, what do you think? Tony spread his hands. Don't even think about it. I am Iron Man, the suit and I are one. To hand over the Iron Man suit is equivalent to handing over myself. No one can have it. Lee Zuguo countered, so what do you need me to do? Tony said seriously. Get some insurance, and your support. Just that. Lee Zuguo said. Tony hesitated for a moment before stating his true purpose. No, no, no. I also hope you can use your super intelligence, just like in that comic book of yours, use your super intelligence to think for me, how to solve this palladium poisoning problem. This question really stumped Lee Zuguo. His super intelligence wasn't the traditional kind found in comics. Even if he did have a true super intelligence, it was impossible to create something from nothing without the corresponding knowledge in his brain. However, for the sake of superhero points, he pretended to think, and then, as if a flash of inspiration struck him, he said, Tony, perhaps you can find the answer in the things your father left behind. He was a true genius. Lee Zuguo's inner thoughts were completely different. If all else fails, I'll just inject you with a dose of Compound V. After hearing this, Tony wore an expression that said, are you kidding me? That's your super intelligence. Fine, Star-Spangled Boy. I'll go look for answers from my father. From now on, Stark Industries will be fully open to bought commercially. Thanks, Stark, Lee Zuguo replied politely. With the help of Stark Industries, Vought could completely separate from Pacific Pictures and become the true Vought International. Of course, without Stark, Vought could still do it today, just not as quickly. Tony's expression was indescribable upon hearing that nickname. Stark, your accent is too heavy. Forget it. Next month, a racing team I sponsor is competing in the Monaco Grand Prix. Do you want to come and watch? Lee Zuguo smiled again. To pay tribute to your father, right? I'll come to cheer you on next week. After the conversation ended, Lee Zuguo didn't participate in the subsequent group party or the luxurious nightlife. He took his secretary, Natasha, and returned to Vought early. Facing Lee Zuguo, who didn't touch a drop of alcohol and went home on time, Tony added another evaluation to his mental list. A goody two-shoes with no vices. What the hell, there's actually someone like this in high society America. Vought International. Inside the office, Lee Zuguo looked expressionlessly at the newspapers on the desk. This was the data Raven had collected over the past few days. On the front page of the Daily Bugle, a heavy blue truck was impaled by several uprooted street trees. The headline read, Homelander saves a robber, price, roadside trees, a truck, and a delivery man with fractured bones. A small note in the bottom right corner of the picture stated, the delivery man is currently at St. Vincent's Hospital with 4 broken ribs and a ruptured spleen. He turned to the third page of the second newspaper. There was an aerial photo of Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, where the road surface across 3 blocks had cracked, the asphalt had flipped up, the underground water pipes had burst, and the water had risen to knee height. The headline was even shorter. Demolition capability comparable to a nuclear bomb. It wasn't just print media, similar hot topics were appearing on the internet as well. A post on Twitter. At NickTruthSeeker, I've tallied Homelander's rescue records for the past month, and the direct property damage is nearly $100 million. Indirect losses include traffic paralysis, business closures, and medical expenses that are still being calculated. The total loss caused by all the crimes he prevented in the same period is $47 million. Is this kind of rescue really meaningful? The top comments below. When he caught that bank robber, he shattered the entire building's glass curtain wall. The falling glass shards cut 11 passers-by. 11. And the robber was holding a fake gun. My mom's car was parked on 3rd Avenue, and when he caught the criminal, it crushed the roof. The insurance company said this counts as collateral damage from a superhero, so they won't pay. When Homelander caught the bus, it snapped in two. Physics is simple. His force was applied to a single point, not distributed evenly across the surface of the object. He can't hold anything up at all. We don't need a Superman like this to save us, he only causes more property damage. Clearly, Lee Zuguo was being cyberbullied. His past rescue operations were basically being dug up to settle old scores. He wasn't Superman and didn't have a bio-force field. His force field could only wrap around and contain himself. When he lifted a car, the force was transmitted from his 10 fingers to the car body. The metal had to bear the entire weight at those 10 points, and then it would bend, break, and disintegrate. He could catch anything. But anything he caught would shatter. Natasha looked at the data and explained, Sir, this is a premeditated attack. You don't need to pay attention to it. Vought International will step in to help you resolve it. Natasha hoped Lee Zuguo could stay calm. Once he started retaliating, he would be defined as anti-human. No one wanted to face an opponent like Superman, and Black Widow was no exception. Moreover, after observing him these past few days, she felt that Lee Zuguo wasn't the dangerous element that Nick Fury said would turn against them at any moment. Raven, however, did not agree with Natasha's view. She was considering things entirely from Homelander's perspective. No, I think we should make those people pay the price so they can learn to shut up. Natasha frowned. Doing that will only make an already bad situation even worse. Lee Zuguo ignored their argument. He knew that there must be someone behind such a massive wave of negative press, but that wasn't the reason he was angry. It was the popularity points and fans constantly fluctuating on his panel. And those vicious comments, this definitely had to be paid trolls. Lee Zuguo took a deep breath. He had thought he didn't care about these things, but now that he was actually being cyberbullied, he found that he still cared a little. These peasants. I worked so hard to save them, and they actually turn around and. Thinking of this, Lee Zuguo's eyes became slightly red, but he held it back. Raven, can you go pour me a glass of hot milk? Lee Zuguo's voice interrupted their argument. Raven glared at Natasha before replying, "Okay, sir." After Raven left, Lee Zuguo took out his phone again to check Twitter, YouTube, and other sites. He discovered that although many people were bashing him, there were also many fans defending him. "Are you okay, sir?" Natasha was very concerned about Lee Zuguo's state. After all, her mission in infiltrating Bot International was to find his weakness. But so far, she had found that Lee Zuguo's only weakness seemed to be a fear of being cyberbullied. But the essence of fearing cyberbullying was actually just a lack of love. Lee Zuguo regained his composure and smiled. "I'm fine, Natasha." Natasha looked at the forcibly smiling Lee Zuguo, not knowing what to say. This Superman-like figure seemed to never have those bad habits. No clubbing, no smoking marijuana, no partying, his social life was pitifully small, he didn't drink, and he didn't even have any nightlife. With Homelander's ability, he could completely do whatever he wanted. This could be seen from the insane powerful figures and politicians on a certain island. Homelander could be even crazier, but he didn't. The things he cared about most every day were popularity and fans. The thing he cared about most was the audience's evaluation of him. Even just now, after being cyberbullied, he didn't get angry and do anything irrational. Instead, he quickly controlled his emotions and didn't affect anyone else. In this US where people constantly get high and chase women, what kind of peerless good man is this? In comparison, is lacking love such a big flaw? Since he lacks love, wouldn't it be fine to just give him love? Trading a bit of love for an emotionally stable Superman, isn't that a worthwhile deal? Natasha felt that Nick Fury's prejudice against Homelander had already outweighed his rationality, and at the same time, she realized this was an opportunity. She looked at Homelander, who was sitting alone on the sofa silently digesting his emotions, walked over with lazy steps, and sat down gently beside him. She elegantly raised a hand, her fingertips grazing his golden hair as if by chance, and then slowly pulled his head into her embrace, pressing it against her chest. The soft and warm heartbeat was transmitting temperature beat by beat. "It's okay, sir. That's not your fault. You don't have to bear it alone. You still have your fans and you have me." What? Lee Zuguo was in a state of confusion. What was going on? Did he say something to Black Widow? Was she coaxing him like a child? "I am Lee Zuguo." Superhero popularity plus 5000 from Black Widow. Lee Zuguo, who was about to struggle, suddenly calmed down when he saw the superhero points. Rubbing his cheek against that softness, the heartbeat sound in his ear was clear and dense. He suddenly felt that it wasn't unacceptable. Clang! The moment he heard the sound, Lee Zuguo broke free from Natasha's embrace and put on a cold expression. At the door, Raven was glaring angrily at Natasha, who was slowly smoothing out the wrinkles in her clothes. On the ground at her feet, the spilled milk was splashed everywhere. Beside her was a terrified James, who was even stammering incoherently. "Sorry sir, I. Walking in on the boss doing something was a major taboo in the workplace, especially when it involved the hidden side of Homelander." At this moment, Homelander was also expressionless. He should have detected the two of them before they entered, but he had been too relaxed just now, not because he had been captured by Black Widow, of course, but because he had been stunned by her sudden action, plus the superhero points. "Go." Hearing this, James didn't hesitate at all and trotted away, not forgetting to close the door before he left. The office was instantly left with only 3 people. That's the end of part 1. Part 2 is coming soon.
Thanks for watching my video. Please like and share it.